Good morning. My name is Fred Farias. I'm chairman of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. It is 9:06 a.m. and I would like to call the October 26th quarterly board meeting to order. Please be aware that this meeting is being broadcast via the internet and those present in the boardroom may be visible to the public. Members, when I call your name, please announce present. I, Fred Farias, is present. Donna Williams, vice chair.
Present.
Javid Anwar.
Present.
Stacy Hawk.
Present.
Emma Schwartz.
Present.
Ashley Thomas.
Present.
Welcome Wilson.
Present.
Daniel Wong.
Present.
Paige Sawyers.
Present.
Please report in the minutes that we have a quorum. Please excuse the absence of Mr. Clever due to duties requiring his attention elsewhere. Do I have a motion to approve these absences?
So moved.
Okay, motion by Vice Chair Williams, second by Mr. Wilson. Members, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Hearing none, motion passes. The Texas Higher Education Leadership Conference is the announcement that I'd like to talk about. Our annual Texas Higher Education Leading Conference is coming up. Texas is the country's leading change maker in higher education. To capture the energy of the moment, we are excited to announce the Texas Higher Education Leadership Conference is now Texas Higher Edge Leading Texas Future. The leadership conference will be held at the AT&T Hotel Conference Center in Austin on December 12th and 13th. This year's agenda will include training that fulfills the statutory requirements for university regents and college trustees, a powerful lineup of keynote speakers and panelists, a showcase of STAR Award winners recognizing the exceptional work of institutions of higher education, and the 2023 State of Higher Education address by Commissioner Keller. Registration details and updates are available on the coordinating board website. Fellow board members, staff requests that you confirm your attendance at the conference by completing the forms provided with you in your meeting materials. Staff will collect and complete the forms at the end of this meeting. Next, for agenda item 2 will be the commissioner's remarks. The commissioner will provide us his remarks on some of the agenda items that we have that we'll be discussing today. Commissioner Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So good morning, board members, our higher education leaders, our stakeholders joining us here today. I'm happy to be here. Hope everybody is able to get here safely and excited to begin this important discussion. As Dr. Frias mentioned, our annual Higher Education Leadership Conference is coming up December 12th and 13th, our Higher Edge 2023 Leading Texas Future Conference. And I hope you all here who are watching and watching online will join us as we're going to gather with higher education and government and industry leaders to discuss the road ahead for higher education in Texas. Some of the highlights will be a keynote address from Ted Mitchell, who's president of the American Council on Education. That's a major coordinating body for America's colleges and universities. And ACE is working now on some of the frontiers of higher education policymaking, including new approaches to university rankings. And we'll be sharing some of that work. We're also going to have Nicole Smith from Georgetown Center for Education and Workforce, which is one of the nation's premier organizations for analyzing workforce needs and their relationship to higher education. Nicole leads the center's econometric and methodological work, and will also provide a keynote. Now, today's major policy discussion is going to be focused on research, innovation, and commercialization at our research university. Of course, this is timely as there's a lot of discussion about the importance of research to our state's competitiveness, and a lot of that related to early voting has already begun on Proposition 5 to create the new Texas University Fund. So the discussion today is going to highlight some of the work that we're doing with health-fronted strategies to develop a statewide strategic plan to improve tech transfer and commercialization that was funded through a grant to the coordinating board through the U.S. Economic Development Administration. So I'm looking forward to that discussion and sharing more broadly how we're working in partnership with our institutions to boost innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship. I also want to welcome our new Assistant Commissioner for Internal Audit and Compliance. So we're happy to have RV Gonzalez. We heard from RV last yesterday during the Agency Operations Committee. So Ari was most recently the Internal Audit Director for the Texas Department of Insurance and previously worked with the State Auditor's Office and Department of Motor Vehicles. We were excited to welcome Ari to join our team. And also want to say thank you to Paul Mayert for serving as the interim AC. So that concludes my remarks. I'm looking forward to these discussions today and turn it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner. Members, any questions for the Commissioner? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is public testimony. We have not received any public testimony today, so we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is agenda item 4A, consideration of possible action to approve minutes from the July 27, 2023 quarterly board meeting. Do I have a motion for the approval of minutes, which you've had in advance for the July quarterly board meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Daniel Wong, second.
Second.
Second by Stacy Hawk. Any discussion? If not, members, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, no. Hearing none, motion passes. Agenda item 4B is consideration of possible action to approve the minutes of the August 22nd, 2023 special call board meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the August special call board meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wilson. Second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thomas. Thank you. All in favor, please. Any discussion, first of all? Hearing none. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Agenda item 4C is consideration of possible action to approve minutes for the September 18, 2023 board retreat. As you can see, this board has been very busy. Since our last meeting, we have a lot of minutes to approve because we met several times. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes for the September board retreat?
So moved.
Motion by Vice Chair Williams. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Hearing none, motion passes. Next is the consent calendar. The consent calendar includes non-controversial items that we can take up, can be approved without comment or discussion. This allows us to take up more time, save time for more items that need more of our attention. Highlighted items in gray are the consent items on the agenda. You've had the time in advance to review these items, and of course, any board member can request an agenda item to be removed from the consent calendar. That way we can give more opportunity to discuss that item or items fully during our meeting. We're going to take up the consent calendar in two parts, non-rule items and then rule items. The items that we have placed on non-rule consent are 7E, which is consideration and possible action to acknowledge gifts and donations to the board. 8B, consideration and possible action to approve the placement of a member of the health-related institutions formula advisory committee for the 2026-2027 biennium. 8C, consideration and possible action to adopt the facilities audit report. 10C, consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation relating to the revision of the principles of good practice for academic degree and certificate programs and credit courses offered at a distance. 10D, report on activities of the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, Texas Education Code 61.06641. 10E, consideration and possible action to appoint members to the Advisory Council of Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities. 10F, the report on activities of the Applied Texas Advisory Committee. 10G, report on activities of the Workforce Education Course Annual Advisory Committee. 10H, consideration of board delegation to the Commissioner for approval of the report required by the General Appropriations Act, Senate Bill 1, Article 3, Section 4787, Texas Legislature related to the effectiveness of the Advise Texas program. 10K, consideration and possible action to adopt the report to the board on school closure and or teach outs pursuant to Board Rule 7.76. 10L, consideration and possible action to adopt the community college transfer student report. 10M, consideration and possible action to delegate authority to the Commissioner of Higher Education to approve and submit the study of shortages in certain health professions pursuant to Texas Education Code Section 61.06691 and 11B, report on grants and contracts. Members, at this time, I would like to add the following item to the consent calendar. 8D, which is consideration and possible action to delegate authority to the Commissioner of Higher Education to approve and submit the data report required by the Texas Education Code Section 61.0662D. If anyone wants to know that, they can ask the commission about that one. Does anyone else want to add any other items to the non-rule consent calendar? Does anyone want to remove any items from the calendar? If not, do I have a motion to approve the non-rule consent calendar as amended?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion by Ms. Thomas, a second.
Second.
Second by Vice Chair Williams. Any discussion? Remember, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Remember, the next item on the consent agenda is board rules, which these rules placed on the consent calendar are either technical, conforming, or implement non-controversial policies on which there is consensus. Members, the rules on the consent calendar today are 8E1, which is consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to board rules 17.20A5 concerning a name change from the tuition revenue bonds to capital construction assistance projects. That's a change for many years, right, Commissioner? 8E2, consideration and possible action to adopt proposed amendments to board rules 17.112 concerning data required for use in facility audits. 8E3, consideration and possible action to amend board rules 22.186 concerning the future occupation and reskilling workforce advancement to research demand forward loan program. Do I have a motion for approval of the rule consent calendar, please?
So moved.
I have a motion by Mr. Wilson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hawk. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? No. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. Next, we move on to agenda item 6, which is the major policy discussion. Recall that major policy discussions are topics of interest for staff, policy experts, and or stakeholders. Provide quarterly board members with information on higher education policy matters that are for initiatives that have the potential to impact Texas statewide. The major policy discussion will focus on research, development, and innovation. Commissioner Keller will introduce this agenda item, followed by a presentation by consultants from TIP Strategies, Mr. John Roberts, who is the managing partner, Ms. Katrina Parkey, consultant, and Mr. John Karas, Vice President of Business Development. Commissioner Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll set the context about some of our work on our research and development goal and in general, and those metrics for building talent strong Texas. And then we'll hear from John Roberts, Katrina Parkey, and John Karas from Strategies to share an update about those efforts to develop a statewide tech innovation and commercialization plan. So next slide. So as we think about what we're going to need to do to maintain Texas competitiveness, if we're still our own independent country now, we would be the 8th largest economy in the world. It's clear that our competitiveness, our prosperity, they increasingly depend, of course, on our talent pipeline and having an educated workforce. But that long-term competitiveness also depends on our ability to compete at frontiers of knowledge, information, and technology. So on our ability to attract and retain and create talent that can support our industries as they're growing, as they're changing, and undergoing a great evolution. So as you all know, when we took up the project to update the state plan, our previous plan had been entirely silent on the research and development mission of our institutions. And so building a talent strong Texas includes now bold goals for increasing educational attainment, awarding credentials value, and also strengthening research, development, and innovation. Next slide. So we've included goals around research and development, both to increase our annual private and federal sponsored research expenditures by $1 billion a year, and also to increase our production of research doctorates to 7,500 a year. So the research doctorates, as we discussed before, that's an important metric to help us gauge the strength of our research, university research programs. It is also our future faculty pipeline. Next slide. So We'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about our university classifications and how we've been, these classifications work at the state level, how they work nationally. So, of course, we've seen tremendous growth in research and development activity within higher education and beyond in Texas. And we have many research institutions that are working at the frontier of our academic discoveries and knowledge. So at the state level, we assign our public universities in 5 different peer groups for benchmarking purposes. So for today's discussion, we're going to be focused primarily on these 3 groups in the slide. So our research universities, emerging research universities, and doctoral universities. This is going to be where most of our research expenditures are generated. So our research universities offer a comprehensive range of graduate and professional programs. They have the largest emphasis on research and a much broader reach across the state, across the country, and around the world. Research universities, as they're currently defined, are expected to award at least 200 doctoral degrees annually and generate more than $150 million in restricted research expenditures. So currently, we only have 2 institutions that would meet those metrics. So UT Austin and Texas A&M are the 2 institutions that are classified currently as research universities. So that their Texas A&M University system, because of the way that Texas A&M runs some of the research dollars through the A&M Foundation, but it's primarily Texas A&M University. Now, our emerging research universities, we talk about them a lot. They also offer extensive graduate programs, and their faculty are also involved in research activities. And these institutions in our current classification system are expected to generate at least 20% of those research universities' criteria for restricted research expenditures. So that would be $38 million for 2020. And then finally, our doctoral universities, they do have doctoral programs. They tend to offer fewer doctoral programs than the others, and they have to generate at least $2 million per year in research expenditures. Now, it's a little hard to see on the slide there, but you'll see the institutions that are bolded represent our research one or R1 universities. So something in Texas, sometimes you'll see billboards that highlight the R1 status of different institutions. So just to help shine a light on what that means. So for the current Carnegie classifications, an R1 institution awards at least 20 PhDs and generates at least $5 million in research expenditures. So it's important to know that's a lower threshold on both measures of research and emerging research classifications. So Texas has 11 R1 institutions now, which makes us tied with California and New York for the most R1s in a single state. But what's unique about Texas is that most of our Texas R1s are public institutions, which is different than you see in New York and in California. So a decade ago, we only had 4 R1 institutions. So we really have seen rapid growth in the research and development capabilities of our institutions. We also have 11 R2 or Research 2 universities. So you can see that the investments that the state has made over multiple years on research infrastructure have yielded some significant progress. So when Governor Abbott first declared his candidacy to be governor of Texas, he set the goal that Texas should have multiple institutions that are counted among the top 10 public research universities in the state. The legislature, the legislative leadership over multiple years has adopted a number of different incentives and support structures for our research activities. And you can see how that's translated in some significant growth. Next slide. So as those research expenditures have grown, the data from the National Science Foundation shows that we've increased now to more than $6 billion in academic research and R&D expenditures. So the biggest source of that funding is consistently has been federal, but we've seen our largest growth in funding from the institutions themselves reinvesting in their research mission, and also in private resources that come from partnerships with businesses. So over the 10-year period, we saw 110% increase in institutional funds that were reinvested and recommitted towards the research mission. 77% growth in funding for businesses from state and local governments. That there was significant growth there. Also, that's about 46%, and then 33% growth from nonprofits and 20% growth in our federal funding overall. So we're currently in a period in the United States where there are significant federal dollars available for research and innovation. And so in this last legislative session, of course, the legislature committed substantial funds towards the research and development mission of the universities, which we're hoping to see translate into additional federal and private investments in Texas over the coming years. Next slide.
Commissioner, a couple of questions real quick.
Yes.
So did you say that R1, did you say the barrier for that is, and why is, how close is Texas State University to that?
They're very, very close. They're just at the cusp of being R1. So ACE has taken over, where we'll have the initial at the conference. So they've taken over the Carnegie classification. So all that's under review now. That's why I keep saying it's currently this and probably that, because that's being reviewed right now about sort of what those categories will look like. But under the current thresholds, Texas State should they should blow past those thresholds pretty quickly.
And then it looks like Texas significantly more as a state, especially local government funds, academic R&D expenditures.
So so one of the things, and it'll look even better over the next few years, right, with these state expenditures, which is the legislature, of course, they committed $3 billion to help capitalize this new the new TUP fund. If Proposition 5 passes. They also made some direct investments in the existing state structure and state incentives. And I have to say, I appreciate that the legislature aligned all the metrics for the emerging research universities for our comprehensive university with our same metrics that we use in Palestine, Texas. So on private federal research expenditures for the emerging research universities, also on production and research softwares. And then now the legislature, in addition, has been investing around thematic priorities like semiconductor research or aerospace technologies, and there's a significant portion of those dollars are focused on the university. So hopefully that will help us. Those state investments are meant to help us attract more private investments as well as federal in the state.
Wow, it seems notable. And also that Florida is not on this list, but just thinking about size, you know, size-wise.
I think your microphone close enough. Which state did you mention?
Florida.
Sorry.
Observations. So do we have any data, it jumps to 2020, anything like within 2021 and 2022 yet?
This is all pulled up from NSF data, so there's a lag there. So we don't have all of the data by source yet that we could roll up across all of our institutions. So we could do it for our public institutions. We don't have all of the complete picture yet.
Yeah, so, and also from 2010 to 2020, obviously, do you have an example of the other category, which seems to have grown a little bit?
Sure. So so there are some funds that come off the so there might be like private donations that are specifically for research purposes. We get categorized in other categories. Okay, so next slide. So this picks up on the point that Ms. Hawk raised about sort of where we sit relative to other states. So when we compare just overall our research and development expenditures to other states, we do quite well in general. So We're ranked third in the nation currently on the amount of academic research and development expenditures we generate each year. So, so by these metrics, California and New York are the only two states that have more R&D expenditures. Now, when you start looking at the sources more closely, you'll see that in general, for most states, so the federal expenditures are the largest source of R&D funding for most states. They generally makes up some between 40 and 79% of research and development funding for the top 10 states. But among the top 10 states, it's notable that Texas has the lowest share of its funding that comes from the federal government. I would argue we don't actually draw down our fair share of federal funding in Texas.
Repeat that again.
Yeah, we don't get our fair share of programs in DC who are monitoring the meeting. So compared to Maryland, right? Yeah, so yeah, Maryland's in their backyard, but it also has almost 80% of research funding. Federal government. So overall, we have a little more diversified mix of funding sources. So in addition to that 40% from the federal government, we've got 28% of our research and development funding that comes from those institutional funds that they're reinvesting in their capabilities. At this point, it was 14% from state and local government. That's going to be larger as we incorporate these most recent appropriations. 7% from businesses, 7% from nonprofits, 4% from those other sources the chairman asked about. So in particular, we think that there is opportunity for us to attract more, not just more federal research, but more industry-sponsored research. We only have 70% of our research and development funding coming from businesses, where if you look at like Maryland or Michigan, much smaller share of their funding comes from private industry, they're 3 or 4%. But on the other hand, if you look at states like North Carolina, that's about 10% of R&D funding that comes from businesses. And given the size and direction of our Texas economy, we think there's tremendous untapped potential for our Texas institutions to partner with industry and link their innovation efforts more directly to what's happening in our economy. It's also going to be important to note that even on these older metrics, the state and local governments contributed more funding as a share of total research and development expenditures than any other state in the top 10. And again, that's going to accelerate as the most recent investments are reflected in the state. So the next highest there would be Georgia. The state and local expenditures would be about 6% of their total. Next slide. So this is where the story is a little less rosy, I think, is that when we look at research and development expenditures in the context of our GDP, just to be candid, Texas is underperforming. So right now we would be ranked 28th in the nation for academic research and development compared to our state's GDP. So we spend about, we look for per $1,000 of GDP, we spend about $3.73 per $1,000 of GDP. Now, you will see on the slide that large states like California and New York are also a little more in the middle of the pack. And we put the data into perspective this way. But states like Maryland, Massachusetts invest a lot more in academic research and development than you might expect them to, given the size of the states. So we think given the strength and growth of our economy and the large numbers of public research universities that we already have, it's reasonable to infer that we have a lot of untapped potential in research development and innovation. And I would argue that our universities are actually underutilized assets in our economy right now. So we've got foundations for success in place. And we, of course, we attract business and talent from all over the country, all around the world. But if we're going to remain competitive as the 8th largest economy in the world, then we're going to have to create, not just invest in these universities and improve in rankings and our expenditures, but there's got to be a more direct link between the research that's happening on an institution and the direction of our economy today, over the next 5 years, and the next decade. So this is that's the backdrop for the discussions that we're having today. And so last year, through our Texas Higher Education Foundation, we received a grant from the U.S. Economic Development Administration, or EDA, to focus on improving innovation, commercialization, and entrepreneurship at our research universities. And with those grant funds, we've been able to engage TIP Strategies as one of our partners to help us develop a statewide innovation and commercialization plan to help us benchmark against peer regions to understand what are the leading regions, states, institutions doing, highlight some of those more effective practices, and identify where there are opportunities to improve our translational research and commercialization at our institutions. But before we hand it over to TIP Strategies, I have to call out that we would not have been able to receive these grant funds to be able to dig into this work without the leadership of Ben Schwartz, who was integral in helping us engage with EDA, help us secure those funds, help us make the case for Texas so that we could not only do benchmarking and develop plans, but also have findings that we could share more broadly about how tech transfer is changing and what it looks like to be more effective in Texas and across the country. So I'll turn it over to Emma to study a lot about these issues and different capacities of the last few years. And is there anything you would like to add?
Thank you so much. And thank you to the foundation, to Melissa and everybody who's partnered on making this project come to life. For years, I was working in incubation and acceleration of tech companies in El Paso. And it seemed like all the other incubators and groups working on this effort throughout the state and other states, we were bumping up against the same issues over and over again with universities, tech transfer offices, and a variety of issues, venture capital dollars, et cetera. And we've had several different efforts over the years to remedy these situations, but I think what I realized is it's really hard to fix this in a piecemeal fashion. And what's really exciting about the partnership with the coordinating board is the leadership that the coordinating board could provide statewide, especially under Commissioner Keller, to really identify what the issues are and try to execute on real change throughout the state. And I think that doing this in a statewide fashion could also be an incredible model for other states as we're able to measure the impact that this work will have. And so, so it's been a really fun process. I'm excited to see this work get rolled out and implemented. And again, Commissioner Keller and Melissa and everybody for the partnership and the hard work being done. I'm excited to hear your presentation.
Thank you for your leadership on this. And so with that, I'll pass it over to the TIP Strategies team to share about what we've been learning from stakeholders across the session.
Well, thank you, Michael. Now it is. Thank you, Commissioner, members of the board. Introduce myself. I'm Trina Parkey with TIP Strategies. We're an economic development consultancy here in Austin, going on about 25 years or so that we've been in business. We have a national presence, and it's been a real privilege to work on this project. I would like to begin with some acknowledgements. First, Commissioner Keller himself for his active engagement and guidance in this process. Commissioner Schwartz, because we got to visit with her in El Paso as well. We've had a very robust input process, and at the staff level, definitely has been part of this, both in the research that she's done and the facts that she's provided. I'd like to make a couple of comments, and then I'd like to turn over the presentation to Katrina, because it's best to have the people that actually do the work in the presentation. But two general remarks I'd like to make is, and this is a question we always have to ask ourselves, is what are we solving for here? Why are we doing this? And I think the answer to that question is that while we have a robust and really, I'd say, world-class tech transfer process, the way that benefits the state economically is a question that hasn't really been adequately answered in our view. In other words, it doesn't automatically follow that all of the tremendous research and intellectual property that's in the university will benefit the state. And so that's in a very important sense, what we're looking to solve for here. And those of you who, like many of us, don't really have intimate knowledge of what the tech transfer process is, in the broadest sense, it's almost a misnomer. It's not just technology that can be brought out of universities, but intellectual property in general. Example I can give is Michael Dell and Dell Computer. That's not really a technology company. The ideas that he brought forth are really a business model. Dell Direct, as you know, and so intellectual property is not just technology. And what comes out of our university benefits the state is something that is increasingly on the minds of universities and state economic development agencies and governor's offices and legislatures across the country. Add to that the tremendous flow of federal funds that is going to influence a lot of what states do. And I think you have a sense of just how important this is. And then my final remark is really to say that the outcome here, the potential, is to put Texas at the very forefront nationally of the benefits of tech transfer. Using the tremendous amount of intellectual capital that's in our universities more directly to benefit the state. And let me nuance that just a little bit. There is nothing that comes out of our universities that guarantees that it will benefit the state. There's no guarantee for that. In fact, it's not considered the mission of a tech transfer office, TTOs as they're known. It's not a requirement that it benefits the state. So we see that as a very explicit outcome. If we more directly link that research and that intellectual property to the state in the attraction of more capital, more talent, and very importantly, startup companies. So I'm going to turn it over to Katrina and have her walk through the tremendous amount of work that she and others in our team really does.
Great, thank you, John. We can go ahead and move to the next slide. Good morning, everyone. My name is Katrina Parkey. I'm a consultant at TIG Strategies. And on a personal note, I'm a proud product of the UT system. I went to UTFA for undergrad and UT Austin for a degree in public policy and my MBA. So I'm really excited to be back and benefiting the state of Texas in this project. But on this slide, you see that the competition for innovation and R&D is fierce. Texas has made some significant investments recently, but we've also had some great wins. ARPA H is a big designation. There are 3 hubs in the nation, and we got one of them in Dallas at Pegasus Park. That's a fantastic win for the state. We also had 2 successful tech hub winners announced just earlier this week, and the lead agencies on those tech hubs are universities. So there's some significant progress underway. But the competition is fierce. Texas did lose on a bid for a microelectronics innovation hub recently. There are 8 across the nation, some in Arizona, some in Ohio, 2 in California. And so this is the prime time to really be doubling down on this work because other states are investing significantly in Texas to keep our competitive edge. More can be done. Next slide. We've been at this project for quite a while. We started back in May, and you see a number of different tasks that we've completed so far. But a big bulk of that has been around data analysis and stakeholder engagement. So I'm going to be going over some of our key themes from the benchmarking analysis that we've completed and some of the stakeholder engagement themes that we've heard from our conversations across the state. So next slide, please. In terms of benchmarking data, next slide. We've looked at a number of different indicators to measure Texas's progress and rank in terms of technology transfer. As John Roberts mentioned, technology transfer is really the process of translating academic research into commercialized products in the market. From the university's perspective, that means researchers are completing research at the universities. As they are coming up with new inventions, they are disclosing those inventions to the university. From there, the Technology Transfer Office will evaluate the disclosures, go through pathways to protect that intellectual property, primarily through patents. From there, the option is to license that IP to an existing business or to form a startup. And so that's the technology transfer process. Hopefully, it leads to successful commercial products in the market that are generating revenue and being reinvested back into the universities themselves. So you see a number of different indicators on this slide. It looks like Texas is performing pretty well, but I want to dig into some of those longer term outcomes toward the bottom of that bulleted list, which are academic spinouts and venture capital. So next slide, please. In 2021, Texas ranked pretty well in terms of the academic spinouts coming out of universities. So these are those startups that are being formed to really license the IP coming out of universities and bring that product to market. Texas was number 1 in 2021 with 532 academic spinouts coming out of our Texas institutions that year. But if you contextualize that data, the picture isn't so bright. So on the next slide, we'll see Texas is ranked for academic spinouts that stay in the state of Texas. We go down from being number 1 to being number 8, which is 27 academic spinouts staying in Texas in 2021. This might mean that the startup is acquired by another firm outside of the state of Texas, which is great. You know, that's a successful exit for that company. But a lot of the times it means that startup is moving outside of the city. And that's an issue, right? We want Texas to be the place for academic spinouts to survive and thrive and bring economic benefit back to our country. So this is an issue that we're looking at. On our next slide, we talk a little bit about venture capital. And it might be one of the reasons why some of those academics now are moving out of state. You see Texas ranked 4th in terms of venture capital dispersed over the last year, but states like California are way ahead of us. They are dispersing a lot of venture capital. And so they connect back to making startups sticky to Texas because the draw that venture capital has on where a startup locates is pretty stark. If a company is located in Texas, they get VC funding from a firm in Boston, for example. That VC firm might say, hey, come out to us, be a little bit closer to us because we can better support you that way. And that's something that we want to prevent.
If I may interrupt, Katrina, just to personalize that a little bit, appreciation of the role of venture capital in broader spinouts can't be underestimated. My own background is in the venture capital industry in the Pacific Northwest. And when Dr. Hood was recruited from California to Seattle to the University of Washington to do genome research, a spinoff from that tech transfer has been enormous for this greater Seattle Puget Sound region. And venture capital that supported it and it continues to support it and the spinoffs from it, almost incalculable benefit. Heavily underwritten by Microsoft, company that are corporate engagement as well. But this, as a benchmark, this ranks very high. And I'd also think it's worth mentioning that our partners in this endeavor is Research Bridge, led by Isaac Farkas. And he represents a firm, heavily capitalized now, venture firm of its own, whose explicit goal is to see more VC money go away from the coasts, Massachusetts and California in particular, and into the, broadly speaking, the heartland. So there's tremendous interest in engaging universities, and let me be more explicit, that aren't either MIT or Stanford in this process and benefiting from it. Sorry.
Thank you, John. So we can go ahead and move on to the next slide. We'll go over some of the insights that we've heard from our stakeholder engagement process. Oh, actually, last thought on the data trends. So as Commissioner Keller mentioned, business applied just 7% of our academic R&D funds in 2020. Life sciences was 60% of that funding. But this is a really prime opportunity to double down on attracting more R&D funding to our state. North Carolina, for example, businesses apply 10% of their academic R&D funding, and 72% of their academic R&D funding focuses on life sciences. And we know that North Carolina is a top competitor to Texas when it comes to life sciences attraction, biomanufacturing. And so if we look at the competition of other states, again, this is the prime time to be doubling down on strengthening these efforts in Texas. Thank you.
just make a quick interjection here. When you think about the success of these tech companies, obviously the technology itself is so important, and that's why tech transfer matters so much. But venture capitalists are looking at the technology and the leadership team. And so producing and keeping entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs in the technology sector is another incredibly important component to attracting those VC dollars and keeping those companies rooted here.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
One question for you. So I know Google's famous for having that contract clause where if you create on the Google, device or on the Google campus, they retain all rights to intellectual property. On these academic spinouts, how does that work? Are these professors taking sabbaticals to launch these startups, or are these students taking over lab ideas, or what's the case?
Well, all of the above. And it's a great question because and this goes to the stickiness of it. So you want engagement at all of those levels, and you want to ideally connect it back to a specific region, ideally at a minimum the state. And kind of ecosystem, you'll hear us use that word a lot, that is required to accomplish that is become part of our mission. We can add to that too.
Yeah, just to add to that, so when we use the term academic spinouts, it really just means a startup form that is licensing that institution technology. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's run by the faculty member who came up with that idea, or the graduate student who helped with that. Sometimes it's serial entrepreneurs, to Emma's point, who are coming in and helping, run and operate that business. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
So moving on to our very extensive stakeholder engagement process that we've had, we've reached out to over 400 Texans in this process so far. We've held regional roundtables across the state to hear directly from higher education institutions, economic development partners, and investors. And through that process, we've had follow-up conversations, over 40 interviews with folks. And we recently just closed out a survey to re-engage all of those stakeholders and help us prioritize some of the draft strategies in our plan. But I want to highlight on the next slide a couple of the key takeaways that we heard in our road trip from across Texas.
If I may interrupt you again for just a second, including that stakeholder engagement, we were really pleased because we talked to heads of the tech transfer offices and in other institutions. We had really robust conversations with the folks at Stanford, at MIT, and in North Carolina. So we've cast a pretty wide net. And again, appreciation for them for their remarkable forthcomingness. I think a lot of us see this not just in the context of their own state competitive advantage, but the national advantage. It's very ambitious and gratifying to see that.
And I will say from the Texans that we've engaged in this process, we have been very happy with how engaged and passionate they are about this topic. We have folks who have come to the table who are ready to start implementing and being champions for this project. So we're really excited about that. But on this slide, these are some of our key takeaways that we've heard. Despite the diverse regions across our state, these have been some consistent messages that we've heard. I won't talk on all of them, but I will briefly mention the top one. So we've had conversations with technology transfer offices across the state, and a conversation with one technology transfer office is a conversation with one technology transfer office. They each approach things differently because they're responding to their local innovation ecosystems differently. And we want to make sure that in this work, we are not prescriptive in saying that these technology transfer offices do things this way, because we know that they know their community best and they know how to respond to the industry needs in their community best. But we are developing resource guides to help. So there are things like standardized contracts that are available that can help with their process, but in no way do we want to say everybody has to use this, because we know that they know what is best for their local community. So now I'm going to dive into the direction that we're headed with this plan and our strategic framework. So on the next slide, you'll see we've got three buckets in how we're approaching this plan. First and foremost, the strategy and recommendations that we're developing are focused on technology transfer and commercialization. That is the bread and butter of this work. We want to provide better supports to higher education institutions to facilitate a seamless technology transfer process. But in our conversations, we realized that successful tech transfer at higher ed institutions cannot happen in a vacuum. It cannot happen in silos. There are other innovation ecosystem assets that are critical to that success. So that's where that second tier comes in. That's where things like risk capital and capital that we talked about live, corporate and academia partnerships live, and things like entrepreneurial reports, research parks. Those are all critical components to a successful technology transfer process. And then finally, our third goal bucket area is around foundational supports. So we recognize that successful technology transfer and the successful running of these companies that are licensing this IP cannot happen if we do not have the workforce to run these startups, to manufacture these products that our faculty researchers are developing. And so that's where a lot of our workforce recommendations.
And I think to underscore what Katrina said and what Commissioner Keller has been emphasizing from the outset, this is where the linkage to workforce really occurs. And we created this framework precisely for that reason. And within that foundational support system, it's interesting to see what the results of some of those roundtables were. When we talked to our friends in Tyler, in East Texas, their number one concern was broadband infrastructure. And it didn't exactly catch us off guard, but it surprised me a little bit to see that of the priority items they had, that was number one. And it's a way of reminding ourselves that we take that for granted here in Austin. Our major metros take it for granted. They don't. And to build that ecosystem without broadband infrastructure is simply not possible. So it's a reminder of why we have to look beyond the narrow silo of tech transfer out of the university.
So you'll see on this slide, we have some bold vision statements for each of these goal areas. And I'm going to spend the next couple of minutes telling you some stories that we've heard from stakeholders across the state for each of these goal areas. So on our next slide, we'll dive deeper into tech transfer and commercialization goals. And you see here an image of the technology transfer process. As I mentioned earlier, starting with disclosure of invention, protecting that IP, and hopefully leading to successful commercial products in the market that bring revenue back to the university. We've had conversations with R1 institutions, with R2s, emerging research institutions, and a resounding reminder for us was that there's more to be done to bring everyone up to a high standard. We've talked to folks that are not R1, not R2, who their main priority is just getting successful federal grants to bring more research dollars into their institution. First and foremost, that's their number one priority. They want to see those dollars. And so when we're looking at recommendations that the coordinating board can implement, we're thinking about how the coordinating board can help share federal grant opportunities for all institutions to be aware of. We're looking at technical assistance in successful grant writing because we want to see those research dollars increase. Beyond that, though, there are other institutions who are really leading the way in technology transfer, and the resources and support that they need are a little bit different. And so we're exploring things like a statewide technology development committee made up of industry leaders who volunteer their time to help faculty understand if this idea is actually needed in the market. And if so, what is that market niche? And how can that faculty member really commercialize that idea? So that's a brief glimpse into our goal area number one. We'll go ahead and move on to our goal area number two. So as I mentioned, this is where the innovation ecosystem assets recommendations live. So we're looking at risk capital. We know venture capital is critically important. And if we have more in the state, hopefully more of our startups can stay in the state. And some of our data analysis we saw over the last 5 years, 90% of investments in Texas companies came from outside of the state of Texas. And that's something that we hope can change with increased efforts. Beyond that, we want to see, to Commissioner Keller's point, increased relationships with our corporate sponsors. Texas is leading the way in things like semiconductors, energy, aerospace. And so we know that strengthening those relationships, increasing industry sponsored research at our institutions is a key area for opportunity and improvement. We can go ahead and move on to our next slide. So the foundational supports goal area is where most of the workforce recommendations will live. In our conversations, we've heard a lot of talk about STEM talent and getting young kids aware of the opportunities that are available in the STEM fields, but also, to Tim's point earlier, entrepreneurial talent is critical. If we have serial entrepreneurs who stay in Texas and can help mentor the next generation of entrepreneurs, it can really move our state in rankings. Next slide, please. So, looking ahead, we are approaching this plan with an eye towards implementation. Next slide. We recognize that a lot of this work cannot be implemented by the coordinating board alone. It cannot be implemented by institutions of higher education alone. So we're looking at the different tiers or roles that folks can play to make this plan a success. At the state level, we know that the coordinating board can lead efforts in providing more statewide supports to all institutions across the state. We're also looking at what how the plan might inform the next legislative agenda for the coordinating board. One step below that, we're also looking at institutions. We want to provide better supports to them. In no way do we want to prescribe or limit the way that they do things, but we want to make sure that they are aware of all of the statewide supports that are available to them and they know how to access them. And then finally, we recognize that local innovation partners have a role to play. So we want to make sure that local innovation partners, whether it be an entrepreneurial support organization or an incubator space, know people at our universities who can help them in their efforts. Next slide. So we previewed some of our benchmarking data with you all today. That is complete. We have delivered that. In terms of our next steps, at Higher Edge, we will be releasing a public plan. We will also be releasing more information on the data website that goes into a deeper dive in R&D funding, so you all can see the data for yourselves, and anybody in Texas can see that data for themselves. In the new year, we'll look towards implementation. We'll roll out the very detailed technical appendix that goes into more detail on Texas's competitive position. It'll go into more detail on some of the best practices we've learned from across different states in the U.S. And we'll also facilitate a webinar to re-engage all of the stakeholders and walk institutions of higher education through the document so that they are aware of all the resources available and know how to actually.
Thank you for that opportunity, and we're excited about the next phase, and including Emma's point that this may even have broader regional implications. Thank you, Commissioner.
So just to underline a couple. So so from where we sit at the agency, so we look at this work through the lens of we're committed to being a resource. We want to be a credible partner. We want to be an advocate for higher education. So this work, the idea is will help us understand where there may be gaps, but also where there may be opportunities. So, for example, we could, in partnership with the institutions, advocate for proof of concept funds, so that we could accelerate the translation of research and innovations into impact. I mean, we saw in this last legislative session that the legislature is willing to invest, but what I would call out is if you look at the enabling legislation for the Texas University funds, so they're capitalizing an additional $3 billion to start. But there's an important addition, and when you look at the acceptable uses of that fund, that specifically calls out accelerating the innovation and tech transfer. So it's not just increasing the research expenditures, drawing more federal research to the state or advancing the rankings. The legislature wants to see impact. They want to see that those investments are going to translate into impact and the opportunities for a regional economy in the state, and we're willing to invest if we can help draw that clear line of sight and support our institutions in that. So when I've been in dialogue with folks at MIT, with Stanford, I was just last week elsewhere. There's one of the things they emphasize is that you need to look beyond the expenditures, even beyond the patents, or even the data from the TAP strategies folks illustrate, even maybe beyond the initial formation of the companies. So if we have a discovery at our universities translate even into a startup that ultimately ends up moving to California, or a discovery that's commercialized in Singapore that may be good for humanity, but it's a limited impact, economic impact to the state of Texas. So we need to have that clear line of sight for our policymakers to invest in ways that are going to translate not just into a stronger research and development infrastructure. It's not about rankings. It's not about dollars and expenditures. It's about being able to remain competitive into the future. And so I think it's important to emphasize. And to Emma's point, then there are some important gaps. So when you're at MIT or you're at Stanford, one of the things that you do have is access to talent. It's often, again, to Cage's question, they will emphasize it's mostly not going to be the faculty member or the principal investigator who's the CEO of the company. So do we have the talent that we can pair with the faculty members so that we can grow companies? Do we have that? Are we able to connect that with the venture capital to be able to grow these companies and retain them in Texas? So I'm excited about this work. This is I think something that will be of high interest to the policymakers. Looking forward to this discussion at the leadership conference. And again, to them, I want to say how much we appreciate the opportunity to do this work, coordinating work in partnership with the institutions.
Great. Members, any questions of the panel?
Yes, I do have a question real quick. But first of all, I feel very excited about this initiative. It's just exactly what I think what our state needs is to create an ecosystem in terms of bringing the research into development, and then create a system that we have a venture capitalists coming in, and then you kind of trickle down into the workforce, that we create a system that we have high-tech workforce or educated workforce to take care of the business when that idea become a business. So it's just exactly, we flow so well. But just on what Commissioner said, personally, I kind of biased a little bit in terms of the talent. I think our research is just like a football team in a school, So football team, you get good football player, you got a good football team. Research, you got good researcher, you got good football team. And right now we're lagging behind because I'm sure there were some new ideas, some new faculty, but can we inject some area that the board or as a state we can help to kind of push faster in terms of helping institution to get I wouldn't say star researcher, but attract much better talent. That's the first step. Get a good football team. Football team, you need some young guy, you grow them, but at the same time, you need some star players so that we can get a good football team. Right now, we are lacking is definitely, we compare the idea coming out, people coming out from Stanford, so coming out from a school from Texas. EC will go to Stanford, so it's a star research. So I'm biased, I lead faculty, and I need a plan that we can push faster to help our institution to get better faculty. Right now, I heard that we actually, in terms of salary, I think our Texas school is not lagging behind. But the problem we have is another ecosystem. I graduate from, say, if I graduate from MIT, I want to go to teach in Stanford instead of coming down to teach one of the school here because just the nature of that. So how are we going to get a more comprehensive plan to get some better football player in the front so that we can accelerate the process of this plan. Without football player, the football team will struggle. Even though you have all the system set up, but your team you don't have that star player. So I'm biased about faculty. I'm all about faculty, and it's anyway. I know all the different schools will have their own plan, get their plan. But is it as a state can we have a plan that can help them to attract talent, especially very special talent? As a matter of fact, very special talent that the whole world is looking for them. So how are we going to compete with them? That's I think we need to pay a little more attention. Thank you.
This is a really important point. the strength of these institutions really depends on the strength of the. So you have a strong principal investigator. First, the startup costs are high. It can cost you $6 to $10 million just to outfit their lab. But these researchers can routinely bring in more than 10 times their salary, and that's just in the grants when they're successful. We have some tools in Texas that we could better connect to these efforts. So, for example, like the Governor's University Research Initiative. So we've $10 million. That's been focused more on trying to attract Nobel laureates and National Academy members. But one of the points in these conversations that really stuck with me actually from I was talking with one of our vice presidents for research. So it's it can be beneficial to recruit, say, a member of the National Academies, but depending on where they are in their career, then or even somebody the Nobel laureate, sometimes that prize is awarded for work that they did decades ago. And so what we need to do is identify more of the emerging talent, the folks who are going to be National Academy members and the future Nobel laureates. And perhaps one of the things we should consider is including one of the metrics being considering folks who demonstrate a track record in terms of tech commercialization to be one of the considerations. So instead of just thinking about the prizes and the recognitions, so on more conventional metrics, can we help connect dots between some of our efforts to attract top talent and what we need to be able to actually translate these ideas and insights into impact?
Basically, it's like we produce a lot of folks' talent and then bring them back home and be here in Texas, we educate people. This board, I was thinking we have MIT, Stanford, and Harvard graduates on this board alone that have come home, and which is great, and live here and participate in our state government's volunteers. So, but that's Dr. Wong, that's a really good point, is that we educate people, but getting people back to help the economy of Texas, all these bright people, and to be able to continue to do that. And it's a challenge. Commissioner and I have talked about that. And we need to come up with better ideas on how to do that. So any other comment or question on that page?
Yeah, one more to add. I find this very interesting because as somebody who's kind of been in a lot of different pots in the last few years, from a very rural public high school to a private university at TCU in Fort Worth to now a large public law school at Texas A&M, I find that no matter, and this is an opinion, there's no facts behind this, but I find it, as much work as we put in, I find it very geographically centered on why you see results like this, because in the different places I've been, venture capital is definitely less talked about than energy or banking in Texas. And I think it's one of those things, I think exposure to that industry matters a lot. So you'd probably see more people at Stanford or even universities that aren't as prestigious, out like University of California, Santa Clara or something like that, talk more about those industries because they're more exposed to that industry. And so when it comes to pulling Texas students that go away to a university back home, yes, that's obviously the goal. But at the same time, I think there's just a natural inclination to have certain industries in certain places to where they may want to come home. But if you want to be in venture capital, you need to be in the Bay or in Cambridge or something. Whereas if you want to be in oil and gas, come home to Texas. And so that's just, I think exposure to industries and kind of that geographic nature of industries is something that we're just going to naturally fight against.
I think that's an astute observation, and the target industries that Commissioner Taylor mentioned that the legislature emphasized in this last session creates that kind of energy. You see that with SpaceX, aerospace, and not centered on Austin, by the way. Interesting. You see it with life sciences. The hubs in Dallas area now are remarkable, huge philanthropic involvement there as well. And then finally on the semiconductor side, and connecting back to Commissioner Keller's goal and the goal of the coordinating board, you see expansions of Samsung, you see direct impact on the workforce. So I think that's exactly right. We have to make that connection.
I just want to add a couple comments. Anecdotally, I've spoken with a number of elite researchers at elite institutions who are presently a little disenchanted with the environment on their campuses. And some have talked about coming to Texas for that reason. It seems a real opportunity that we have. Similarly, emerging talent, I've seen PhDs who are incredibly talented leave and go start private labs because the fundraising model in higher ed right now is so cumbersome. And it's easier to raise private money and not have to deal with the bureaucracy of higher ed institutions. So that is certainly an emerging space that I think that as we want to rethink about how we cultivate and attract that talent, I do think it's long been true in Texas that some of our very best talent has gone to the coast to be educated and to make their money and then come home. And absent a few key industries in Texas, that's been true. And we've benefited from that money coming home. I really think this number of VC spend, if we look at 23, is going to look very different than 21. I think mid 22 to mid 23, VC mostly kept powder dry. Valuations really came down. I've seen it pick up a lot since the summer. And I think we are seeing funds established in Texas, companies established in Texas, move to Texas and invest in Texas. So I really think we're at a tipping point for a lot of reasons. We have a lot of structural benefits, but workforce, that talent, that ecosystem is still behind our coastal peers. But we're at such a moment to capture and change that. And I think these are all going to start to look much better as we see numbers going forward.
So what can we do to follow up on her comments? What can we do to accelerate that opportunity?
We're in the process now, and you will see it with the EDGE conference, giving you those recommendations. We're not ready to vet them. Well, we're vetting them now. We're not ready to reveal them yet because they need a little bit more nuance. And incentives are a sensitive area. You want to make sure that you have the right incentives, ones that will actually get traction on one hand, and on the other, you want to make sure that you'll have broad support from it. So that's what we're working on right now. And the surveys that we sent out, we had a tremendous response rate. We sent out how many? 400 or so, and well over 100 responses. And in that survey, we asked folks to prioritize exactly what you're getting at. What will make the most difference? What is most needed? And then we'll look at ways in which the coordinating board can be a leader in advancing that agenda.
Yeah, because really, I think our job is to come up with recommendations to the legislature.
Yes,
On how to help
exactly.
fix the problem. And I think they would be looking to us and others to come up with informed recommendations. Now, we have the capability on the tracking of federal grants, dollars, et cetera. Does the coordinating board have the capability to develop such a kind of a central hub, just like we do for other education things? On behalf of the state, I'm sure each university has its own team of grant writers, and I'm sure that at the state level, there's probably the EDC has that, but I don't know if anybody is, I don't know if we're the right organization, but it seems that we could be maybe the repository of such information paired with what each public institution in Texas has, where their talent is and what the capacity to do. How do we encourage them to? Is that something we ought to pursue?
Yeah, I kind of envision we're kind of clearing house. So I already think about, we already have a venture. Actually, I was personally involved in a research and development venture, but I don't think that we know about that. But if we can create a system that if somebody has these kind of things report to us, maybe we can assist them together with VC, because right now they're struggling to get venture capitalists. And at the same time, also about faculty. If that's a school that think about that certain area that they have certain staff faculty, they can hire them. They may report to. If we have a system that can assist it, it's all about dollar. So we want a clearing house, and so we can. So they will report to us if we can have some assistance to them. Right now we don't because they don't. I mean, so this the venture that I'm talking about, two things, faculty and venture I'm talking about, they cannot get VC because they're from a Texas school, they're not from MIT, and they cannot attract talent to even join the team to create that. So it's encompass everything. It's not just one factor. But if we can be a clearinghouse and we can create some incentive that they will come to us and we can help them, then everybody will come to us and then we can kind of determine. Of course, we need to set up some sort of criteria to determine. Everybody will come to us and we don't have. But I just kind of like.
So these are,
we can do something like.
yeah, these are really important points. So we certainly, in partnership with the institutions, advocate for resources to attract that top talent to Texas and increase the likelihood, try to increase the likelihood they would stay in Texas, they would form their companies in Texas. Also, one of the themes that's come out in some of these conversations that I think it might be well at this point is that one of the things that has tended to happen in Texas is we tend to think institution by institution or region by region. That means that, so there's Dallas competing with Houston, competing with Austin. And so one of the issues that was raised when the legislature was investing around semiconductors and aerospace is that they're hoping that it would catalyze strong partnerships. So we can compete better if we present as Texas across multiple regions, across multiple institutions, and we don't cut each other up as much in some of these, like the competitions for the big center grants, for the big federal grants. So I know that's one of the priorities of the legislature is how do we present better as a state across multiple institutions and across multiple.
I think one example we haven't really touched on here today, but can talk about is the Prevention Research Institute of Texas. And so this fund provides prevention dollars throughout the state, but provides research funding to our institutions of higher education. But they also have a product development group. So they're funding startup companies in the cancer space that come out of Texas institutions or that move from outside the state into the state. And they fund clinical trials, which is another way to move life sciences here. And so they've been working through this model now for, 14, 15 years since they've been in existence. And on the product development advisory committee, we look at all these factors. What will attract a company to root here, right? And how do you define them being a Texas company? And all these questions are considered. But I think that the secret model is a really interesting model for how they are looking at all aspects of the innovation ecosystem, what role they play in it, and then how you kind of spread the money throughout the state so that it elevates the entire state.
Any other comments or questions for our panel? If not, thank you, Emma Schwartz, for all the work that you've done. I know that you've been very engaged. The staff, Alyssa, Henderson, and your staff, all our staff. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Thank you, Ms. Harkey. Thank you for the work you have. Look forward to December to the update. Thank you for all the work and the leadership on this important topic, and we look forward to the update in December. Thank you all for being here. Next, we'll move on to agenda item 7, matters relating to the full board. Agenda item 7A is an update on building a talent strong Texas. Alyssa Henderson, Chief of Staff and Executive Director of the Texas Higher Education Foundation, will provide an overview of the available questions. Ms. Henderson,
Thank you, Chairman and members. My name is Melissa Henderson. I serve as Chief of Staff and as Executive Director for the Texas Education Foundation. This morning, I'll give you a brief update on our ongoing rollout of our Building Talent Strong Texas plan. Since our last update in July, we've continued work related to various aspects of the plan, in particular credentials of value, which, as you know, lies at the heart of both the plan itself and the new community college funding model. As we continue our work to implement House Bill 8, Texas community colleges have begun receiving state funding primarily through an outcomes-based funding model that is aligned with state higher education goals in the Building and Talent Smart Texas Plan and regional and state workforce needs. As you know, Council 8 established a new funding model through which colleges receive 95% of their state funding through a formula based on measurable student-focused outcomes, including completion of credentials of value, transfer, and dual credit aligned to a pathway. We continue to work in close collaboration with community colleges across the state as we develop draft rules for fiscal year 25, which will come to the board in January, and look forward to continuing to do so moving forward. Additionally, as you just heard in the major policy discussion, research, development, and innovation continues to be an area of focus, including the work that TIP Strategies is conducting. And additionally, as the commissioner mentioned earlier, upon passage of HJR 3 and the upcoming November election, the Texas University Fund will provide funding to Texas Tech University, Texas State University, University of Houston, and University of North Texas to continue to bolster research efforts of the university. This, of course, builds on investments the state has historically made in the University of Texas and Texas A&M University Systems research efforts. Finally, later this fall, aligned with Higher Edge, we're excited to release secure data dashboards that will include institution-level data and analysis across 3 broad areas: labor market outcomes, graduation rates, and transfer. This continues to be an exciting time for this work, and we look forward to continue to keep you closely apprised. Commissioner, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Henderson. Members, do you have any questions for Ms. Henderson? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next item. Thank you. Agenda item 7B is an update on the Texas Transfer Initiative. Elizabeth Mayer, Assistant Commissioner for Academic and Health Affairs, will present this item. Please be able to question Ms. Mayer.
Good morning, board members. Nice to see you all. So this is an update that I give every quarterly board meeting, and we just want you all to be up to date in terms of the progress that we're making on this important effort. So next slide. So just as a reminder, we now have the Texas Direct Transfer degrees, which are a field of study and in addition to the Texas core curriculum. So as you'll see here from the last board meeting, we have added 2 additional fields that have a completely revised fields of study, which is very exciting, psychology and nursing. So we have made progress since you all implemented the revision of the rules in March of 2021. We have now have 7 that have gone completely through the process, which includes a subcommittee of faculty members, as well as a significant amount of opportunities for the institutions to indicate their if there's any challenges with the fields of study that the subcommittee develops. So very exciting. We're at 7 now. As I will remind you all, biology, there were some challenges with the biology and the English fields of study, and those were actually paused. And over the last, in the spring and over the summer, we've had a small work group from the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee come together to work on an alternative framework. For biology, there's a lot of lower division courses, and it just didn't fit into the framework. So we acknowledge that when we put together the framework that there might be some kind of tweaks or other revisions that we may need to make. So what we're planning to do is that work group has completed their work, and at the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee, which is scheduled for, I believe, November 27th, to bring that forward to the full committee to decide how they would like to proceed. And then for exercise science, that was a committee that did not have enough courses in the academic course guide manual. So over the last couple of months, they have been meeting, and I believe they have developed 4 new courses. And that will go to the academic course guide manual advisory committee that will be meeting in early November. And if those are accepted, we'll be moving forward, and hopefully that committee will be able to reconvene to develop a revised field of study for exercise science or kinesiology. Education and history. So those have gone through the process of having a subcommittee meet, the faculty meet, and develop a revised fields of study. Those were put out for public comment. There were minimal public comments. We took it back to the chairs, and they did not have any concerns based upon the comments. So those will actually be moving, they were approved by TTAC and will be moving forward to the collection of the directed electives. And I just want to clarify for the education, that includes EC through 3, EC through 6, as well as 4th through 8th grade. So although it's listed as one, it's actually 3 distinct pathways, and we are actually going to likely be doing more different kinds of pathways for education because those certifications are different. And then English, they had, as I mentioned earlier, a little bit of a challenge, and so they were put on pause. Communications, I'm excited to report, we met last week, and they actually developed a revised field of study. And so that will be moving forward at the TPAC meeting on November 27th as well. And then lastly, computer and information sciences, as well as engineering, those will move forward once we have some kind of determination about that alternative framework. So exciting work. I looked this morning, we have had over 400 faculty who have participated in this process and are continuing to be engaged with our institutions to ensure that there are no challenges, and we want to make sure that we're supporting our students as they're moving through these various pathways. So that concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Dr. Krautman, your team, Ms. Mayor, do an outstanding job. The commissioner and I sometimes have to testify over the years, and I will tell you, this has always been, this project started years ago, and really from the legislature, because I mean, this is really making an impact on our students and transfer. Remember, you know, what is the role that we do as a board? Provide access, affordability, lack of duplication. This part really goes to the affordability part. So when the students and parents try to decide, well, my student's transferring, we get calls on, you know, why is this not transferring from example ACC, you know, to UT Austin or vice versa? This is what this work's about. It's making an impact for our students in order to save them time, money. So it really, and so for the 400 plus members, thank you. Please send our thanks. Hours and hours of work. There's a lot of detail to go. I remember the biology, Elizabeth and I talking about, they're very passionate, as they should be, about the courses and the rigor and the importance of the transfers from community colleges or any colleges. And so it's really important. And these professors are and instructors are very passionate about their courses. And we want to make sure that we have the highest quality. And there's a lot of hours and detail. And as you saw in the biology, and I was a Southern electrobiology major. And so there's a lot of detail. And so you want to make sure you have the best quality in the transfer. So thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Dr. Krautman, and your whole team for the hard work you do, and the members of those committees. They spend hours and hours on this, and it's really making an impact on higher education in the state. So thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, also I want to underline, you know, how much I appreciate Elizabeth and the team who work on this. So historically, also the work on transfers is incredibly contentious. So even the work that went into Senate Bill 25 in 2019, there was a lot of tension that was around that work, and there are a number of people here in the audience who were also in those conversations and share some of the same battle scars that with me from those discussions and deliberations. I think what's particularly striking is that, so this is one of the priorities when I came into this role in 2019 with the board to improve transfer, and in the work that was done, which continued through the early days of the pandemic to develop a new governance structure, has really paid off. I think what's most striking, what's most important is that the collegiality of this work. So not the 400 faculty who are participating from across 2-year and 4-year institutions. There's clear processes for folks to be able to weigh in, to have their any concerns, to share their ideas, and then for those to be brought into focus so that the students can be clear that 60 hours will transfer and apply to the degree. That's remarkable progress. And this last legislative session, there were some tweaks to the transfer legislation to align with the new governance structure. And what was striking to me is that there was really no controversy at all. There was all the testimony was positive. There were no attempts to subvert or even substantially amend the bills, and those just went through as uncontroversial measures. And so that's really a testament, I think, to that partnership across the four-year institutions, across the two-year institutions and with each other, and to the work that's within the team and facilitating this work. So I just want to underline that for the board and for the audience, how much we appreciate that.
I do have one real quick question.
Sure.
Will there be any additional field of study be added in the
Yes.
future? So it's trended on.
So typically what happens is at each Texas Transfer Advisory Committee meeting, we provide data to the advisory committee about the highest major and transfer majors, because what we're trying to do is capture the highest number of students. So what we'll do is we'll provide that list again, and then it is up to the 24 members of the Texas Transfer Advisory Committee to make that determination. But it is based upon the data that we provide them.
Great, it will be a long time.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
A lot of hours.
Yes.
Lot of work. Thank you all. Any other comments or questions on this particular item for Ms. Mayor? If not, we invite you to stay up here because you're in the active item as well. Agenda item 7C is up to the program approval, present program approval. So the mayor will present this and be available for questions, Ms. Mayor.
Next slide, please. Hi. Over the last several board meetings, we've discussed revision for the program approval rules. And at the meeting, actually at the last October meeting, so it's been a year since we've done this rule revision. And at January, you adopted revisions to the program approval rules. So the implementation date for those rules was June 1st for the preliminary planning, and then September 1st, 2023 for all of the other rules. So as you can see here, I bring this slide up because this is kind of our North Star as we work through all of our program approval revisions, so that we keep these in mind. You know, better aligning degree and certificate approval processes to the refresh strategic plan, making sure that we're in line with the statute, minimizing institutions' regulatory burden, and really supporting that innovation. You know, I think we learned through the pandemic, there are potentially shifts that institutions want to make in their degree program offerings, and so we want to be able to not inhibit that. And then prioritize the board meetings on the most meaningful program approval questions, achieving the policy objective of having a comprehensive catalog of all of our credentials offered in the state, which really ties back to that refresh strategic plan and making sure that we are counting all of the things and all of the credentials that are being offered by our institutions. And then really improving the administratability of program review and approval with policies and processes that are feasible, efficient, and flexible. Next slide. So I just want to thank our team here at the coordinating board, my team in academic and health affairs, as well as our IT department or ISS, as well as the PMIO office. This is a significant lift in terms of all of the forms and the implementation that needs to happen. Some of our technology was quite outdated, so it has been a significant lift to get us to a good place. So academic and health affairs have also held 3 lunch and learns since the last board meeting to provide ongoing updates to the institutions about the new approval processes and updates on the form development. We've also updated the program approval web content to reflect the new forms and processes, and we will continue to build our web resources as new rules and processes are put into place. We're also beginning the development of our new academic certificate notification form and the rules developed by the Division of Digital Learning regarding distance learning, which will go into effect December the 1st. And then we're collaborating across our 2 divisions to develop forms and internal procedures associated with those new rules. Next slide, please. So I think I can go to the next slide. Yes. So I wanted to show you an example of some of the shifts that this rule implementation project has required. You can see that this first screenshot on the slide is the current portal institutions use for submission of program approval forms. It's an older homegrown application with limited functionality. So I think you can see here, this is like 1990s, maybe early 2000s technology. So the second screenshot here is really the new data submission portal. and was a hub created by the IT team where we're working with them to integrate our new program approval form submissions as well. IT has put in a lot of work to add this functionality to the portal, and this new location will support AHA's long-term work of consolidating the different applications institutions need to use to submit required documentations to us. Because right now we have several, trying to get it on one. The top priority for the division is really related to this project is getting the new online forms launched. We are working through that. We are a little behind, but the form development team is working very hard, and the agency has allocated some additional resources in order to support getting these launched in the new portal. Next slide. So approved and pending academic and workforce requests. So now I'm going to move on to the academic programs that have been approved and those pending approvals. So as you can see here, all of the academic programs approved since the last board meeting, as well as the other revisions that the division has processed. So this is July, as of July 28th through October the 4th. So you can see here the program changes. We've had 66 of those, and these typically requests are for title changes and designation changes. Semester credit hour changes, that could either be an increase or a decrease. Administrative, we've had 11, and those are creation of or changes to administrative units such as departments or colleges. Distance education, these are requesting to change or add modalities to off-campus. So you can see there we've had 36. And then new degree programs. So you can see here we've had 44 of those, and you can see to the table to the right the various disciplines that those encompass. And then we've received 15 planning notifications. Next slide. Okay, and so these are the ones that are currently in the queue for us. So we have 37 new degree programs, 9 program changes, 2 administrative changes, and then 7 distance education changes. And of the new degree programs here, you can see the various fields, and as I think is somewhat reflected from the agenda today, we have 10 in the health professions space. Next slide. Okay, so you can see here all of the workforce programs approved since the last meeting, as well as other revisions that the division has processed. So you can see the new degree programs is 15, and these categories are similar to the academic requests, apart from the continuing education programs, which are we have 2 of those in the queue right now. So I think that's my last slide. Oh, we have one more. So these are the pending workforce. So we have 6 new degree programs, and as with the academic, you can see the disciplines in that table to the right. So we have a couple in education and a couple health professions, and I think that's us.
Well, let me tell you that, again, the team, I see the list of the team, I get the weekly report, I actually look through all the programs. And again, Dr. Troutman and Ms. Mayor, please kudos to the team and supporting board and staff, the amount of work and hours that go into it. I get the recap every week. I'm telling you that, and Commissioner, I tell him it's pretty amazing work that the staff does to look at the due diligence, because we talk about the quality and how important it is, and how I'm with the staff, and then I'll call Dr. Troutman and I want to know about this or that, and he gets right back with me. And so really, again, top notch the work that's being done by this team. And this is just an overview of everything that goes on behind the scenes. So this is not taken lightly. I think looking at the quality of the programs, and I know the institutions probably think our staff is always on top of them asking questions, but that's the due diligence that goes on behind the scenes, the work before it even comes to the board. And if any board member wants to have any information, any particular programs, you can reach out to Ms. Mayor, and she can provide that information. And I do occasionally refer to Dr. Troutman on specific programs that are new or unique for the state. And I think it's really important to continue to do that and strive for excellence, which is what the team does. So thank you for all that work.
Thank you.
Any comments or questions from Ms. Mayor? Thank you. If not, we'll move on to agenda item 7D, which is an update, another of my favorite areas and projects, our STAR Award program. And I'm really excited about this year's Star Award program. Our coordinating board has been recognizing institutions for their exceptional contributions to Texas higher education for more than 2 decades. This program marks the 22nd anniversary of the program, and I'm looking forward to recognizing this year's recipients. Carl Kruger, Senior Policy Director, will provide an update and be available for questions. Mr. Kruger.
Thank you. I would like to say that the 2023 Star Awards really. There we go. That's better. The 2023 Star Awards really built upon kind of more robust process that we implemented last year in terms of soliciting applications and finding recipients. Nominations were once again solicited from all of our advisory councils and advisory committees. From those nominations, we invited institutions to submit an application. After a very thorough review process, internal review process that included staff from academic and health affairs, college and career advising, data management or research, digital learning and student success, including the commissioner's office and even some board members. We found 5 institutions that really stood out as being more innovative and really helping to advance the goals of the Virginia College Strong Texas. So without further ado, 2023 Star Awards are. We have Houston Community College for their Vocational Advancement and Skill Training Academy or VAST program. Texas A&M for their Open Educational Resources, director for that area. Texas Southmost College for their overall efforts towards improving student success. Texas Tech University for their brand new Raider Success Hub, their Biting Hub. And last, University of North Texas for their Empower, Learn, Excel, Envision, Advance, and Rise or LER program. I think in addition to the geographical diversity of these institutions, there's a good balance of 2- and 4-year schools, as well as a variety of approaches to, helping to support students that they serve. And of course, their efforts will be recognized in December at the Texas Higher Ed Conference. I would like to add that internally, we at the coordinating board are continuing to refine and hopefully improve the process. In the coming years, really making it more evidence-based, data-driven, and while at the same time, hopefully, getting more institutions to apply and showcase really their very worthy programs. I would like to thank everyone who took part in this process, particularly our internal evaluation review team, which had staff members from all the divisions that I mentioned before. Dr. David Troutman, extremely helpful. Of course, the commissioner and of course the board. Before I ask if Dr. Troutman or the commissioner would like to add anything, I would just like to say that I feel very fortunate to be a part of this process. It really is a agency-wide effort. It's all different kinds of divisions working together, and it really is a wonderful way to showcase and highlight the really impressive efforts of our Texas institutions who really are helping to build a talent strong Texas. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to.
Just thank you, Mr. Kruger and the team. I have served before over the years, and it's amazing work. And I think you're exactly right. Getting top quality applicants and highlighting the work that our institutions in the state are doing. It's great. Congratulations to the recipients. We look forward to recognizing you and presenting you with the award December 12th, 13th at our conference here in Austin. And it's really a privilege to see the amount of work and the detail that goes into the institution's projects. And thank you to the committee. I mean, It's a very detailed scoring system. And all those, I encourage people to apply next year because there's a lot of great talent in our state institutions have to highlight. So thank you, Mr. Kruger. Thank you for the team. Any comments, any questions for Mr. Kruger? Board comments? If not, thank you. Look forward to the presentation in December.
Thank you.
Okay, next members, we will move on to agenda item 7E, which is consideration and possible action to acknowledge gifts and donations to the board. This item is on the consent calendar. Agenda item 7F is consideration possible action to delegate to Commissioner the authority to renew the emergency rules adopted at the August special call board meeting. Nicole Butler Peterson, General Counsel, will present this item. Be available for questions with Butler Peterson.
Yes, good morning, Chairman, board members. As you all will no doubt recall, what is now actually a few meetings ago, despite this being one of our regular quarterly meetings, in August, you adopted 10 new rules on an emergency basis that are necessary to implement the community college finance system. So those rules, emergency rules, are effective for 120 days, and they can be renewed for not more than 60 days. The way the time periods fall, the 120 days will expire at the very end of December. So we will need to have a readoption of those rules for 60 more days, which is the maximum that emergency rules can be in effect. Because that is between board meetings, this item asks the board to delegate the authority to the commissioner to make that readoption for the additional 60 days. And then with the anticipation, and I think a couple of folks have mentioned it today, but kind of the roadmap for the resolution of all of these rules is that in January at the board meeting, you will have your regular rules come into effect for FY24 that will be substantially similar with very limited modifications from the emergency rules. And then at that board meeting, we also anticipate you will have a preview and discussion of some of the FY25 rules, which will be different than the 24 rules. So if you adopt these, if you grant authority to the commissioner, he will renew these rules. 24 rules you'll adopt in January. At that meeting, you'll also discuss the 25 rules, which will go out for proposal immediately after the board meeting. And then those first tranche of the FY25 rules will come to you for adoption in April, with another round behind those in July. So I know that's a lot to keep track of, but this is just a pro forma request for the rules to continue in effect.
Members, do you have any questions for Ms. Butler Anderson? We have a lot of rules to review the next couple of meetings.
Chairman, you have, we anticipate approximately 31 rule packets for you in January. And it's probably getting close to 20 in April. So you're a busy working board.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Good. Do I have a motion? Any other, if there's no comments or questions, do I have a motion to delegate to the commissioner the authority to renew the emergency rules adopted at the August 2023 special call board meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Wong, second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Thomas, thank you. Okay, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposition, no. Hearing no no's, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Agenda item 7G is consideration and possible action to adopt a resolution authorizing the issuance of the state of Texas college student loan bonds in one or more series, the delegation of the authority for administrating and approving the activities necessary to complete the sale of the private activity bonds. Anthony Infantini, Chief Financial Officer, will present this item. Richard Donahue, partner with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, and lead honor is here. Good. Managing Director with Hilltop Securities will be available to answer questions. Mr. Infantini.
Good morning, all. My name is Anthony Infantini, Chief Financial Officer, and I'm here to present an item traditionally brought to the board each October and requires your approval. The coordinating board manages the College Access Loan Program. This program issues loans to students attending public or private nonprofit institutions in the state of Texas. To fund these loans, the agency sells tax-exempt private activity bonds that are backed by the full faith and credit of the state. The agency sells these bonds annually, typically around the summer, to fund loans for the following academic year. A bond resolution is necessary and requires approval by the board to delegate the authority to the commissioner and chief financial officer to execute the activities necessary to sell these bonds or refund prior year bonds. The resolution before you authorizes the issuance of up to $200 million of bonds for funding student loans in the 2024 to 25 academic year, with the authority allocated to THECB and statute. The resolution also authorizes the potential refunding or defeasance of remaining bonds in the 2013 B bond series, which became callable this past August, but were not called at that time, as well as the remaining bonds in the 2014 bond series, which will become callable in August of 2024. As in the past, any refunding activities will only be pursued if sufficient savings exist. Mr. Richard Donahue, who is our bond counsel, can call Parkhurst and Horton, and Mr. Lee Donner from Hilltop Securities are here to provide additional information and answer any questions you may have. Mr. Donahue will first provide legal background and details regarding bond resolution, and Mr. Donner will then discuss the market conditions, past and present, and how the student loan program compares to other issuers.
Before we start with the new board members, Mr. Donahue and Mr. Donner, can you give us a little background about you? And I know I've seen y'all, know y'all for many years on the board here, but for our new members, please.
Right, I'd be happy to. But for the record, I'm Richard Donahue. I'm partner with the law firm of Parkhurst Horton. It's been my great privilege and honor to serve as bond counsel to the board personally since 2012. My firm specializes in public finance. We've been around since 1919, and some of the partners the firm originally set up these programs back in the 60s. So we have a great deal of experience working with the coordinating board. It's a client that we take very seriously. This resolution that's before the board, it is, as Anthony indicated, is the official action of the board authorizing the issuance of bonds. It's a delegation. It delegates either to the commissioner or to the CFO the ability to price the bonds within certain parameters. The parameters are ones that typically used here. It's either for if there's a refunding, there must be savings involved, and with regard to the new loan transaction, the loans are up to 40 years maturity date and up to 15% interest, which is way higher than we ever use. There's you can't sell them deeper than 95% discounts. Bonds for new money purposes can only be issued up to $200 million, and for funding purposes, it's only callable bonds that are currently callable within this year, which is the 2013 B bonds and then the 2014 bonds, which will become callable in August of next year. The delegation you're approving today will last for up to a 1-year period. Typically, these bonds, as Anthony indicated, price around June or July, a little bit later. The adopting resolution now allows us to go to the bond review board and apply for a volume cap because these are considered private activity bonds. In order to issue tax exemption, you need to go through the bond review report process to get volume cap that have category allocators to loan bonds. And so we would like to be able to go in and get that reservation at the beginning of the year. So that's part of why this process occurs now as opposed to later. This resolution also authorizes the bonds to be sold by a competitive sale. We take this on the bidders and award the lowest bidder, or by a negotiated sale where we work directly with an underwriter to sell bonds to the market. Now, historically, the overwhelming amount of your transactions have been done via competitive sale because there's such a high demand for these bonds. We keep that negotiated language in there as backstop in case there's some weirdness with the market. We've only had to use it 2 times going back to the Great Recession. So last time we had to use that. We fully expect these bonds to be sold on a competitive basis as has been done in the past. And these bonds are issued general obligation bonds of the state. They bear the state's credit rating AAA. They're backed by the state, the full faith and credit of the state. However, they're payable first by student loan payments. So a lot of people achieve a much lower interest rate than student loan loans across the country. I'd be happy to go into the regulations by detail if I'm interested in, but that's a high level overview of the action items.
So could you, for my benefit, I see that we have 1.3 billion of bond debt outstanding, 516 million of constitutional bond authority remaining under current law. So do you add those two together? I mean, why? What is our? And then we have to go back to the legislature after we spent that.
So I'll give you a little bit of history first because traditionally, the coordinating board in the past had a constitutional amendment with a fixed amount of bonds authorized. There were 7 of such amendments going back in the 60s that were passed, where once the authorization is used, you have to go back and get new authorization. About 10, 12 years ago, since Constitution 50B-7 was adopted, which is the rolling authorization. So that it's an evergreen authorization for any one time you have up to $1.86 billion.
So that's where the 560.
That's right.
It's a rolling, so we'll have, each biennium will have a certain amortization of our current student debt. That provides a little room, plus the dry powder we have under that. And then
It's actually on an annual basis, sir. So every year we pay off, kind of the net change between what we issue and what we paid off. Kind of is what we measure that against.
And then what's the relationship between the $200 million volume cap and the chapter 1372 private activity exempt volume cap? Are those two different pockets?
Those are the same thing. So we have to get for the new money bonds, we'll have to get volume cap or it'll be tax exempt under the tax code because they're considered private activity bonds. Because it's a pooled financing where we have loans repaying the bond. So we're in with a lot of other private entities. That's what the tax code requires of us. And so we'll go in for what we expect to be our new money amounts, and now we'll press up 200 million of volume cap to cover that.
Right, so we have a rolling year-to-year $1.8 billion, and then we have a $200 million volume cap per year of new issues. So that's kind of the two standards that we're.
That's correct. Yes, there are multiple limitations that we're working with.
There are comments or questions for Mr. Donner?
First of all, allow me to apologize for appearing before you looking like I showered with my clothes on. Halfway between the parking garage and here, I had bad luck to have the bottom fall out. I did take a shower. Thank you for having me. As King said, I'm going to try to give you a little market perspective, recent past, last issue, and look forward. Your series 2022 bonds were priced on May 25th, 2022. At the time we priced those, and that was competitive bid. As it's been mentioned, you haven't used negotiated sales since the financial crisis. A few years after the financial crisis, 2008, 2009, 2010, I think we did negotiated underwritings. But since then, you've gone back to competitive bid underwriting, and it's very successful, been very well received. At the time, those bonds priced on May 25th, 2022, the Fed funds target rate was 1%. The rate increases had started, so we'd come up from near 0 to 1% at that time. The 10-year Treasury note at that time, on that date, was 2.747. And you sold those bonds through competitive bid at a true interest cost of 3.605. True interest cost, for those of you not familiar with the terminology, combines not only the interest rate on the bonds, but the cost of issuing bonds. Bond counsel fee, financial advisor fee, underwriter discount, all the expenses that were incurred in issuing that debt. So 3.605. I can put 3 more decimals behind it, but I think you get the idea. Your issue this year, series 2023, was priced on June 28th, 2023. A little over a month, a little over a year from your series 22. The Fed funds target rate, which was 1% in 22, was 5.25% when series 23 price. 4.25% increase in Fed funds target rate. The 10-year Treasury note went up from 2.747 to 3.710, almost a 100 basis point increase in the 10-year note. We're not going to get a 3.605, but amazingly, even though the 10-year treasury note was up 100 basis points and the Fed funds target rate was up 425 basis points, we got those bonds done at 3.964. That's only 36 basis points higher than what you had to pay in 2022. It was a combination of things. Anthony made the call to move the pricing up. We'd gotten everything in place. We moved the pricing up about a week, 10 days. Perfect move. We hit the market at an ebb. The other thing that worked in your favor is the market still didn't leave the mantra higher for longer. The market still wasn't buying. Fed was saying it, but the market wasn't accepting it. And so I think we had 6 or 7 really good bids from major institutions. And you got a 3.964 interest rate. Now I want to put that in context against other student loan programs around the country. We represent, I believe, 10 state agency and not-for-profit student loan issuers from Alaska to Texas to New Hampshire. So we are in the student loan marketplace on a regular basis. So remember that 3.964 that you got in June. I'm going to give you some comparisons for other issuers. On April 26th, the Connecticut Higher Education Student Loan Authority, which is a quasi-state agency, not a full state agency, they're kind of half agency, half not-for-profit. They priced a $25.8 million transaction, and they got 4.000, 40 basis points higher. 10 basis points higher than what you got, but much earlier in the year, April 27th. On May 16th, the Kentucky Higher Education Student Loan Corporation, which is a full state agency, priced a combined taxable and tax exempt issue. I'm going to give you just the tax exempt rate because that's the only fair comparison. They got 4.2%, not quite 3 weeks after Connecticut. No, I'm sorry, the next day. I'm jumping ahead of myself. No, Kentucky, that's good. You come along now on June 28th and get the 3.96. So even though rates have continued to increase throughout the year, you come in with the lowest true interest cost on any student loan issue that had been to. It didn't get better after you priced. We just recently priced the New Hampshire Higher Education Loan Corporation. October 18th, they're the last student loan issue that's been done so far this year. And their tax exempt bonds were at 5.2%. So you can see that the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board bonds stood out very dramatically. The primary reason for that has already been mentioned. All those other issuers issue what's called student loan revenue bonds. That's a type of revenue bond. The only thing being pledged to the bondholders is the receipts from the student loans. That's it. That's their security. That's the source of repayment. Coordinating Board stands alone. You're the only student loan issuer in the United States that issues bonds that are general obligations of the state. They always have been. Your program went GO way back when it was created in the mid-1960s, and you've been GO issuer ever since. Now, I want to point out for the record, you probably all know this, but despite the fact that your bonds have been issued in the general obligations of the state all these years, the Coordinating Board has never drawn one dime from the Treasury to pay these bonds. They've been entirely self-supporting. They have been paid from the revenues received on the student loans, and not only has the Coordinating Board's program been self-supporting, but it has built a healthy, respectable fund balance that gives you protection against a downturn that would cause an increase in faults and delinquencies. So you're in a unique position. All the other student loan issuers out there would like to be like your program. Matter of fact, the state of Alaska came within one vote in the state senate of getting GO obligation here a couple of years ago. At this point, you're still all by yourself. Now we're going to look for next year, and the picture is not so pretty. Fed funds rate, you priced in June, it's 5.25. It's now 5.50. There's possibility it can go up some more between now and when you price your 24 bond issue. We don't know yet. The 10-year Treasury bill has gone from 3.71 in June 28th of 2023 to yesterday 4.944. Actually, it's been above 5 for a little while. It's hit back below. Is it going to stay there? Or I don't know. If you were pricing today using the interest rates that are currently in effect, that 3.964 you got on your Series 23 bonds today would be 5.043, an increase of 107 basis points over the issue that you just got. Now, rates going to still be there when you come to market next June, July. I have a crystal ball. I have no idea. But that's the kind of change that has occurred in the interest rate market, even for a AAA credit line. In anticipation of this meeting, the resolution authorizes defunding of Series 2013B and Series 2014. It authorizes, it doesn't mandate it, as has been mentioned. That's a discretionary call as you approach a pricing date. The industry standard for refunding, and it's not a hard and fast rule, but it's a general standard, is that unless there are other circumstances that impact the decision, you should probably get about 3% net present value savings to do a refund. Again, that's not hard and fast. It's not carved in stone anywhere, but it's a general standard that the industry follows. Now, there are sometimes reasons to do a refunding that aren't just economic. People do refundings with lower savings than that because of that. But to give you a sense, we ran refunding numbers on Monday using those same interest rates that I used to give you that projected true interest cost. And if you were to refund Series 2013B right now, you would have negative net present value savings of $788,000. And for 2014, it would be negative net present value savings of $400,000. To hit that 3% net present value savings target for Series 2013, between now and when you did that refunding, rates would have to drop 180 basis points, 1.8%. And to hit 3% for Series 2014, they'd have to drop 120 basis points. So
no refunding.
You probably won't be doing a refunding unless we get some pretty dramatic improvement in interest rates. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
What is the, sorry for all the questions. What is our fund balance?
There's a couple, remember our meeting yesterday, there's a couple, we have a debt service fund that has a full year's worth of payments, that's a couple $100 million or over $100 million. And then we have our reserve fund, which is kind of the excess of all of our obligations, all of our reserves. That was $180 million about at fiscal year end. And that's kind of the money we have that's, unobligated.
Right, so 100 million is kind of reserved under the bond issue. You don't get to.
Yeah, covenant, there's covenants.
180 million is our, by hard work and good luck, that's what we've been able to build up as our cushion.
Right, yeah, that's the prior payments with unobligated funds. I don't, is that the right way to do that?
That's right. I mean, those are the repayments that have come on prior loan programs, prior bonds that have all been paid off. So you have those dollars that are more that are free and clear at that point.
Well, I would just comment there with the fact that we've have that kind of reserve built up and never had to tap state budget for defaults is just a testament to our staff and how they're underwriting and monitoring of all these student loans has gone. So it's a great credit to
The
them.
portfolio is still, the student loan is about 1.3 billion.
The loans outstanding or the
Yeah, no.
the bonds outstanding?
No, the bond outstanding.
Yes, little,
Like that.
right.
And how are we doing as far as the maintaining the AAA rating?
The outlook that we got, of course, it's the rating on your bonds is the same as the state's rating. And so you look at one, you're looking at the other, and the ratings we got this summer were AAA, S&P, Moody's, and Outlook positive.
Yeah, and how are we doing? You made good reference. One of my questions was going to be, you answered it about the other state agencies. How are we doing compared to other clients that you have that are, let's say, not in higher ed?
You compared to my other student loan clients, or
No, you already compared those, so I appreciate that. Just your overall client base. How are we doing with those?
you're across my practice, which includes student loans and other types of state and local government issuance, you probably have one of the strongest fund balances of any client I've worked with. And of course, there's no way to beat a AAA rating. In fact, it's better than the United States government's rating.
So we're doing okay.
You're doing okay. And those factors combined, I might add, allow you to offer one of the most competitive interest rates to your borrowers in the country. And not only that, you do something no one else can do. You have one interest rate. Come one, come all, they all get this very attractive interest rate. No, we've got these teaser rates of X, Y, Z, but nobody gets them because they don't have a high enough FICO score. If they qualify, if the borrowers in Texas meet your underwriting criteria, which is quite reasonable, they all get.
So it's either up or down, it's not a floating.
Right.
And so how do we price, if 5.043 is the projected, if the thing's held for next year issuance, how do we price our interest rates off of the bond sales, or how do you?
I mean, there's a couple of factors. There's a general that you're allowed to remain tax exempt. There's only so much above you can collect as far as like whether you're paying back on the debt itself. So there's that. There's also kind of the cost factors to consider, but generally it's around 2% is the spread you're allowed. So if you on a per dollar basis, you somewhat add 2%, but it's not quite that number. There's a couple other things that go into this IRS arbitrage. So it's usually a little less than that, 6.5 to 7%, but hard to know.
And I'm sorry, one last question, and I'll shut up. What is the relationship between the 308,575,000 approval to issue versus the $200 million volume cap?
The 200 million is the new bonds that would be issued. The 300, the difference there would be if you wanted to refund the callable bonds. That's the amount of principal that's currently outstanding. It wouldn't be issuing new bonds.
Yeah, that threw me off.
Yes, no, the number itself is 200 plus $108 million, which is the sum, which is higher than what the board's seen in the past, because rates have been so low that calling bonds have been an obvious solution. But we didn't do that last summer because even at the 4% interest, it didn't make sense for us.
So in theory, we could, if we thought interest rates were at an all-time historic high and going to go down in the future, we could issue less bonds and use some of our reserves to shore up the student loans as a bridge and then refund later. Is that?
Yeah, historically, in highest interests, I've been your financial advisor in these since 2002. And we've been through some high interest rate periods across that time. And historically, you have made the decision at times to use your fund balance to buy down that interest.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry for all the airtime.
But also one of the things that the board members, I think it's important to highlight, but Anthony can comment on it, so the board's adopted limits on lending that are new as part of the program that are linked to the ways that we estimate manage that for the students. So we want to make sure that we're not facilitating anybody getting out sort of over their skis for what we project for typical earnings. So Anthony, do you want to comment about what that's going to be interaction with that and what sort of capacity you anticipate?
Right, so that the rural commissioner mechanisms just went into effect. It was implemented September 1st for loans effective September 1st and beyond. What that will have is a downward pressure on the amount of the maximum amount of loans, on a dollar basis that we will issue. So what that does is limit how much debt we would have to issue as well. So there's downward pressure on that limit. So looking at, we issued $140 million. That was about, and it's last year was in somewhat consistent year over year, $140 million worth of loans, $150 million. The rule that just got adopted will have a downward rule tracking it, but it could, it's something we'll have to monitor as these loans come into play, but it could be significant and kind of help us issue even less to kind of even, either help with the interest costs, not issue as much high rate interest, but also help with that constitutional limit as well. Because the less that we issue now and the more that we pay off in the past, we have a lot more runway on the 1.86 billion. So that, and then the other thing I do want to mention with the reserve fund is the forward loan program, which is doing as well. The reserve fund is kind of the revolving kind of funding basis for that. So what that is, but those are loans that we will offer that we issue directly to the students that get paid back, that have no bonds tied to it. There's no debt service. So it's just a matter of, and then any of those loans is that, again, are loans we don't have to issue under the college access loan program. So if you combine the forward loan and the manageable debt program, there's two kind of downward pressures on the overall kind of
So in
size.
theory, we could issue 150 million worth of new student loans, pay it out of our fund balance, keep it on books at that interest rate, and then refund, and then put it in some future lower interest rate bond financing.
There may be some tax implications on that. Economically, yes, but
Yes, that's right. I mean, you want to make sure that you're not allocating loans too far out in the future to a bond issue, right? You want the title loans that have been issued within a reasonable amount of time when you issue bonds. So you don't get to look back and allocate too far down the road into your tax law.
And then there's also the forward loan program. We have to all that, and just the other demands on that reserve fund loan, make sure kind of forecast all of that out. But yes, it's a tool that's available for us to say that.
Okay, other questions or comments for the panel from the board? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Mastini, thank you, Mr. Gahn, thank you, Mr. Donahue. Do I have a motion to adopt the resolution authorizing the issuance of the state of Texas college student loan bonds in one or more series, a delegation to the commissioner of the authority for fiscal year 24 for administering and approving the activities necessary to complete the sale of private activity bonds?
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Wilson.
Second.
Second by Ms. Schwartz. Any discussion? All members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Next, we move to agenda item 7H. And that is consideration of possible action performance evaluation of the Commissioner of Higher Education, General Counsel, and Auditor. This item is postponed until later in the meeting when the board will conduct an executive session. Agenda item 8A. Okay, this is matters relating to the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics, chaired by Mr. Javed Anwar. Javed?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Agenda item is committee chair meeting overview. Thank you for joining us for the matters relating to the Committee on Innovation, Data, and Educational Analytics. Yesterday, In committee, we heard updates on building a talent, strong Texas data insight and the formula funding advisory committee. Agenda item 8B through 8E3 was approved on the consent calendar. This concludes our portion. Thank you.
Yes, we're gonna take a small break here for stretching and restroom break. So it's now 11:25. We'll be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. So just a note here, there's a weather alert in here. For those of you that are online, be disconnected, and then for those of us here, if there's any questions, we'll let you know. So we're gonna do the next agenda item is lunch. We're gonna move on and do lunch later, if that's okay with the board. And then we'll move on to agenda item 10, for matters related to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Expenditure by Donna Williams.
Good morning, thank you. Good morning. During the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success meeting yesterday, the committee approved the following items. Minutes from the July 26th meeting, receipt of the FY24 Carl D. Perkins Committee and Technical Colleges Consolidated Grant Mid-Year Reallocation Funds, to appoint members to the Advisory Committee on Post-Secondary Education for persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, report on principles of good practice for academic degree and certificate programs, and credit courses offered at a distance, school closures and/or teach-outs pursuant to Board Rule 7.76 and the Community College Transfer Student Report, delegation to the Commissioner to approve the effective of the Advisory Texas Program report and study on shortages in certain health professions. Requests from the University of Austin and Morrell College of Osteopathy. I messed that up yesterday as well, osteopathic, and I promise I practiced that this morning. Osteopathic medicine for certificates of authority to grant degrees in Texas and 4 new degree programs. Agenda item 10B is consideration and possible action to approve receipts of fiscal year 2024 Carl D. Perkins Community and Technical Colleges Consolidated Grant Mid-Year Reallocation Funds not to exceed $9.5 million. Dr. Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner for Workforce Education, will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Good morning, Chair and board members. So glad to be here with you all. I'm Tina Jackson, Assistant Commissioner of Workforce Education. The Texas Education Code 1.16b requires that the board of the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board approve any agreement over $5 million, inclusive of all amendments. Today, you are being asked to approve the receipt of up to $9.5 million in career and technical education funds that came from the Texas Education Agency. You will recall that the Texas Education Agency is responsible for the state administration of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Perkins 5 funds. TEA allocated approximately $38 million in the Perkins 5 Consolidated Fund to the Coordinating Board for the administration of the state's post-secondary Perkins 5 grant program for fiscal year 2024. The board approved receipt of the funds at its April 2023 meeting. The consolidated funds awards support formula, basic, grant programs, non-traditional, career and technical education, and agency administration of the Carl D. Perkins program. 85% of the allocation, or at least under $32 million, supports the formula grant program. Each year, TEA reallocates surplus funds from the previous year's Perkins program. This reallocated amount is added to the Coordinating Board's current formula grant program. This year, TEA reallocated
up to $9.5 million. This addition to the coordinating board's formula grant program will bring the total to the fiscal year 2024 formula grant award to an estimated $42 million. As a reminder, the formula grants are distributed to colleges and must address the following goals statewide: provide career exploration and career development activities through an organized systematic framework designed to aid students, provide professional development for teachers, faculty, school leaders, administrators, specialized instructional support personnel, career guidance, and academic counselors of paraprofessionals. Also provide with career and technical education the skills necessary to pursue high demand, high wage, and in-demand industry sector occupations, support integration in academic skills and career and technical programs and programs of study, plan and carry out elements that support the implementation of career and technical education programs and program of study. And lastly, develop and implement evaluations of the activities carried out with the funds awarded, including evaluations necessary to complete the comprehensive need assessment. And this concludes my report.
Any questions or comments for Dr. Jackson? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve receipt of fiscal year 2024 Carl B. Perkins Community and Technical Colleges Consolidated Grant Mid-Year Reallocation Funds not to exceed $9.5 million?
Aye.
Have a motion by Janet. May I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ashley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda items 10C through 10H were approved on consent. Agenda item 10I is consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation to approve the request from the University of Austin for an initial certificate of authority to grant degrees in Texas. The mayor and assistant commissioner for academic and health affairs will present this item and be available to answer questions.
Good morning, board member. The University of Austin seeks the board's approval for its first certificate of authority to grant a Bachelor of Arts in Liberal Studies degree. The board is authorized to grant each certificate of authority for a 2-year period. The board may grant successive certificates of authority to an institution for a total of 8 years. After 8 years, absent sufficient cause, the institution must have obtained accreditation from a Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board recognized accrediting agency. UATX submitted a certificate of authority application, and upon a desk review, it was determined that the application was complete, acceptable, and ready for a site visit. The coordinating board conducted a site visit evaluation at UATX on May 9th through the 11th of 2023. With an external site visit reviewers and coordinating board staff who served as a liaison. The site visit evaluation team report was submitted to the coordinating board. The report found that UATX was in compliance with 15 of the 24 coordinating board required standards and was not in compliance or lacked information to support compliance with 9 standards. UATX responded to the report within 30 days of receiving the report, and the responses included the necessary documentation to demonstrate compliance with the standards found lacking in this team report. The coordinating board's 6-member Certification Advisory Council, or CAC, reviewed UATX's application. The site visit evaluation team's report and the entity's response to the evaluation report at its August 8, 2023 virtual meeting. The CAC members voted unanimously to recommend approval of UATX's application for its first certificate of authority with the following recommended conditions. UATX must apply for Texas Workforce Commission approval or exemption immediately after receiving the CV certificate of authority authorization. TWC approval or exemption is required for the coordinating board certificate of authority to be valid. UATX may not apply for an amendment during this initial certificate of authority. UATX must report to the coordinating board changes in administrative personnel or in faculty. UATX must provide to the coordinating board a report after the first year of the initial certificate of authority that includes documentation of continued exemption or approval by PwC, a current audited financial statement, including break-even calculations, enrollment and retention figures, documentation of continued validity of surety agreement, and an updated accreditation plan. The commissioner has independently made the recommendation based upon the information provided from the CAC to approve the University of Austin's application for its work certificate of authority with the conditions stated above. And that concludes my remarks.
Any questions for Ms. Mayor? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Austin for an initial certificate of authority to grant degrees in Texas? May I have a motion?
Aye.
Have a motion by Janet. May I have a second? Second. Second by Ashley. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 10J is consideration and possible action to adopt the recommendation to approve the request from the Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine for its third certificate of authority to grant degrees in Texas. Let's put this item as well.
Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine in Las Cruces, New Mexico seeks approval for a certificate of authority to coordinate clinical clerkships rotations in Texas for third and fourth year medical school students through its regional education center in El Paso. The certificate of authority would be Burrell's third certificate of authority and would be valid from October of 2023 to October of 2025. Burrell submitted its third certificate of authority and it completed a desk review and determined that the application was complete, acceptable, and ready for a site visit. The coordinating board conducted a site visit evaluation at Burrell on June 6th through the 8th of 2023 with external site reviewers and coordinating board staff who served as liaison. The site evaluation team report was submitted to the coordinating board. The report found that at the time of the site visit that Burrell was in with all coordinating board required standards. Burrell's June 19, 2023 response confirmed receipt of the report and thanked the site visit team for their work. On June 22nd, Burrell was granted the status of candidate by the Higher Learning Commission, or HLC, an institutional accreditor. Burrell's osteopathic medicine degree program is accredited by the American Osteopathic Association's Commission on Osteopathic College Accreditation, or COCA. The coordinating board 6-member certification advisory council reviewed Burrell's application, the evaluation team's report, the Burrell's response report to the evaluation at its August 8, 2023 virtual meeting. The CAC members voted unanimously to recommend approval of Burrell's application for its third certificate of authority. The commissioner has independently made the recommendation based upon the information provided from the CAC to approve Burrell's College of Osteopathic Medicine application for its third certificate of authority. And that concludes my remarks.
Any questions or comments?
I have a comment, Madam Chair. So they would be eligible for, as I mentioned, the committee meeting yesterday, for just one more certificate of position. And you may not know this, Mayor, but have we ever had a full 8 years of certificate of authority and someone not met the standard to get the accreditation? That maybe going back in the history archives of the Texas Higher Education.
So if you're getting, Kim Air has been doing this work for a decade. So she may go up to 5 years.
We have had institutions that have gone right up to that 8-year. We had, I believe it's just one that because of the pandemic had some issues in meeting that 8-year deadline. And so the board agreed to issue one more based on extraordinary circumstances. So they went just a little bit over, but then they did meet all the requirements.
Additional questions or comments?
So how does this not hinder clinical rotations within the state, available clinical rotations within the state, availability for other existing state medical schools.
So each entity has to find their own clinical rotations. So the certificate of authority is giving them the option to come into the state to be able to do these clinical
Could
rotations.
that ultimately compete with
Yes,
slots that our in-state current medical students are trying to get?
yes. They could.
So they could, so a little bit of historical background, Mr. Wilson, is when they first came out for authority, the institutions and clerk, so this is clerkships for third and fourth year medical students.
Yes, it's just third and fourth year.
They're established in El Paso.
So they're actually based in New Mexico, and about 50 students are coming in for those clinical
That's what I'm
rotations.
saying, yeah, I mean, the school is in El Paso, well, in New Mexico,
Yes,
but they're
they're
in
doing
El
that
Paso,
first and second year, yes.
in El Paso. But are they also going to other hospitals in
Yes.
Island?
Yes, I think, as far as I know, Burrell, it's only at the El Paso, they're not going anywhere else in the
Anywhere
state.
else? Okay.
Correct. It's only for the third and fourth year, and it's about 50 students who are coming in and
Right.
doing those
So-
rotations. And my understanding is they also have an agreement with Texas Tech Health Science Center.
That was gonna be the question, yeah.
They have,
Are they gonna be, are those students gonna be competing with Texas Tech Health Science in El Paso?
right now they have an agreement in place. Yes, sir.
Sorry, they do have an agreement, and the institutions in the area, really from the state, have a chance to chime in, as we
Yes.
say. So
I just want to make sure we're not,
we haven't received any comments or questions.
I have not received any.
So that answers.
and do we have the ability to limit their residencies within certain parts of the,
Well, this is not residencies, this is
I mean,
clerkships.
they're clinical within certain areas or not really?
In terms of where they're going, I think
It's lots, I mean, they have a, the thought is they're across the border in New Mexico, El Paso students, residents will benefit, et cetera. But what's keep them from going to Tyler, Texas?
I think, based upon, they would have to let us know as part of, their agreement, and we would be notified if that were to happen. And that is not happening right now.
But if you're notified, would we then get to see it again or no? What's that thought?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that the agreement with Texas Tech limits the number of students that they can have in the El Paso area. So they've already limited themselves.
I guess I'm just where I'm fishing, can we, they have an agreement with Texas Tech, can we approve it conditional on that agreement staying in place? Or do they break
I
up?
was like, that's a legal question, I think.
Do whatever they want?
So Mr. Wilson, yes, the board could impose additional conditions on the certificate of authority. That may already be a condition on a certificate of authority. I don't know if we have a copy of that here. Okay, but we can pull that for you and we can look at that. I have looked at this, but it has been a few minutes.
Or just to move things along, we could approve it with that condition if it doesn't already exist.
Yes, and I think that would be fine and appropriate for the board to do. I think that's already a condition, but I can go confirm that. It's fine if the board
No, I don't-
wants to modify or make a motion to amend the approval to include that condition.
Right, and the other thing is, I was Wilson's concern, because it's mine over the years with this particular certificate authorization in healthcare, is we want to make sure that our Texas students have opportunities to have clerkships, that want to have clerkships in our state. And I think that's what the thing
Right,
that we want to make sure.
I don't want this to be at the expense of existing Texas.
Texas medical students and medical schools to be able to have the spots, clerkships available third and fourth year available in the state that want to be in this area.
Because I remember we've had this question years past about if you go to medical school here, then if they're, when you get into residency, most doctors end up living their whole life within
Yeah,
150
it's like
miles. of the
72%.
So if we fill that up and then now we're having to send.
Well, this, again, don't confuse this with residency and clerkships.
I know, but I'm just saying it takes on life of its own.
It does, and it can. So those are important things. Basically, we want to have the opportunities for our Texas students to be able to do their clerkships in the state of Texas if they want to do that. We don't want, lack of opportunities or spots for them.
But I know it's been tight in the past, so
Yeah,
that's fine.
and believe me, the presidents and deans of the schools and administrators look at that very carefully, as they should, to be able to provide opportunities. But your point is well taken, Mr. Wilson, and Rurel has been working with the coordinating board very closely.
No, I think they're probably a great institution. I just want to make sure that we're.
Yeah, and we look at that. I mean, the staff looks at that, obviously, and we will hear from presidents and deans and administrators from all health sciences and medical schools if it becomes an issue. Would you agree, Commissioner?
Chairman, if you want to postpone this item to the end of the agenda, I can pull up the certificate of authority, I think, and look to see if we had, if that was already a condition of their certificate of authority. Happy to let you all go ahead and make the motion now and deal with it now, or if you want me to double check that and come back, we can do that as well.
Since it's in New Mexico and border area, Texas Tech, I haven't seen the agreement in several years either, but they definitely have worked something out.
Right, I'm happy just to say, if it doesn't exist, then it would be imposed, but if it exists already, then I'm fine.
We can.
However you want to deal with it.
Whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Yeah, and that might be a good idea. Give Nicole, maybe move it towards the end of the agenda.
Yeah, so I can have the appropriate language.
Yeah, would you like to just postpone this to the end of the remaining agenda items and come back to it?
Yes.
That would be good. Is that okay, Mr. Wilson, with you?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or comments? If not, we will table it. We will come back to it. Okay, agenda items 10K through 10M were approved on consent. Agenda item 10N is consideration and possible action to approve new degree programs. Agenda item 10-1 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from Alamo District Northwest Vista College for a Bachelor's of Applied Technology, a BAT in Cloud Computing. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions, and we also have representatives from the institution as well. We have President Amy Bosley, Dr. Russell Cohart, Dean of Academic Success, and Dr. John Willow, Professor and Program Coordinator for Cloud Computing, will also be available to, so main comments be available to answer questions.
Alamo District Northwest Vista College is seeking approval to offer a Bachelor of Applied Technology or a BAT degree program in cloud computing that would begin in the fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face and online. And I went over a little bit of the labor market demand and ended yesterday in my presentation. And just as a reminder, in accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, the institution will hire 2 new core faculty over the first 5 years of program implementation. That concludes.
Thank you so much for having us and considering our proposal. My name is Russ Robart, the Dean for Academic Success and joined by our President, Program Coordinator, and the rest of our team here. It's great to hear all this discussion about IT in Texas, and this is one of our attempts to address the labor demands. As you all know, the majority of our Texans engage in higher education through community colleges, and we have a very vibrant IT programs at the AAS level, at the associate's level, in cloud computing, network administration, and in cybersecurity. Our student population, which is majority Hispanic, about 67% at Northwest Vista College, also part-time, also working folks. They're looking for good jobs, and they're looking to get them quickly and as economically as possible. And this offers that ability to do that at the baccalaureate level in the growing field of cloud. We're very fortunate to have amazing and talented faculty that are credentialed to teach these courses, that have industry experience and are credentialed in multiple platforms through multiple organizations. As Elizabeth mentioned, we offer this program fully online, so it's accessible to folks across the state. We shared our tuition proposal, which shows that it can be done, the upper division can be done on an accelerated program of about 9 months at the cost of
about $5,000 in total for the baccalaureate degree if someone's coming in with an associate's in IT. So the jobs that, according to the Texas Workforce Commission, starting with this kind of credential would be around 67 to 70,000, and with experience over 132,000 annually. And we are fortunate again to partner with Amazon Web Services. We're an Amazon Academy, but this curriculum would be generalizable across multiple platforms in the area. So we're super excited to have this possibility and are open to any questions about the program.
Any questions? Does anyone else want to make comments?
First of all, can you tell us a little bit about Alamo Northwest Vista? Tell us, what your highlights are. Tell us not only where you're at, but what are some of the concentrations that you do? We don't have a lot of programs that allow us from Alamo Northwest, but please tell us about the highlights of your institution.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Northwest Vista College is, as you might imagine, in the northwest part of San Antonio. We have about 137-acre campus, and we're serving this semester almost 19,000 students, the majority of which are interested in transfer programs, but we have a growing interest in workforce programs and looking for ways for students to be able to stack those credentials, coming back to us multiple times throughout their educational journey so that they can continue to increase their earning power and be able to sustain their families in our community.
You mentioned stackable credentials. The Commissioner and I have talked about those over time. Can you give us some examples of some of the successes of your students there? Stackable credentials.
Sure, actually, I might turn this to Dr. Frohart and Dr. Grillo to offer those examples.
Yeah, so we try very hard to make sure that students are able to earn credentials along the way through to especially our applied associate degrees. So one of the examples is what Dr. Grillo teaches in. So someone can get an OSA or an occupational skills award on the way to their level 1 certificate or level 2 certificate within the AAS. So they all align, they're getting certifications as they go. And increasingly, we're also trying to build in micro-credentials. So this particular proposal has micro-credentials that are available to students through AWS. So every course or 2 courses, they can get an industry credential, certification, a micro-credential, along with our college credentials as they're going through. So that's what's recognized by industry. That's what's important for them in terms of employment. So that's what we mean by stacking those on the way to the degree.
Excellent. Dr. Grillo, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for allowing us to be here. So the Bachelor of Applied program in cloud computing is going to allow us to provide students the whole realm of cloud computing, which is everything. It's programming, it's cybersecurity, it's data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So we expanded from the associate's degree program, which just deals with it on an infrastructure level. And we can only fit so much into a 2-year program, which is why we decided to expand it into a 3rd and 4th year program to cover all those topics. So at the end of the program, what students are going to see is they're going to kind of follow their passion. They're going to be cloud computing specialists and understand about regulatory compliance, but they're going to follow their passion. They may become programmers in the cloud or cybersecurity specialists in the cloud, or just cloud architects, or get involved in machine learning and artificial intelligence. So that's what the program's designed for, and that's what we look forward to providing.
That's great. And so the highlight of our Texas Strategic Higher Education Plan, Building a Talent Strong Texas, these credentials and what Beth described, I think really makes a big impact in terms of what our goals are with the state commissioner and what we want to do as a state. And San Antonio is a fast growing area, and you're doing it online, which is going to really open it up to a lot of folks, which is a good idea. Thank you all. Thank you.
And did we hear this is the first in the state?
Yes.
Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the request from Alamo District Northwest Vista College for a Bachelor's of Applied Technology, a BAP in Cloud Computing?
So moved.
Have a motion by Dr. Wong, may I have a second? Second. Second by Emma Schwartz. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. Next is agenda item 10N2. Is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler for a Doctor of Nursing practice DN in nurse anesthesia. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions. We have institutional representatives as well. Dr. Barbara Haas, Dean of School of Nursing, Dr. Jennifer Chilton, Associate Dean of the School of Nursing, and Dr. Carol Reeser, Associate Professor, School of Nursing, all are also available to answer questions.
The University of Texas at Tyler is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Nursing practice degree program in nurse anesthesia that would begin in the fall of 2025. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face to students in Tyler. Existing DNP and nurse anesthesia programs in Texas are at capacity. Admissions data from 2020 showed Texas institutions received 1,100 qualified applicants for just 205 available positions. The job outlook for CRNAs is positive. The Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Texas Workforce Commission predict an above average growth for CRNA positions through 2030. In accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, UT Tyler will hire 3 new core faculty over the first 5 years of the program implementation. And that concludes my remarks.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to present our proposal to you today. We're very excited about this proposal. Mr. Roberts from CIP mentioned earlier some of the unique challenges we have in the East Texas area with technology, and our School of Nursing is well positioned to address some of those unique needs of our area. This area of the state has some of the poorest health outcomes in the entire state of Texas. Fortunately, we have a very strong partnership with our new medical school that launched this year, and they're focused also on rural health. Our School of Nursing has almost a 50-year history now of working in our rural communities. And although the University of Texas at Tyler is not huge, our School of Nursing is mighty. We have about 2,300 students in nursing, from the freshmen all the way through to doctoral programs. We also have very strong academic clinical partnerships, and we believe that this program will fill a very critical need for anesthesia providers in East Texas and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would either one of you like to make comments as well?
I just want to say, for our undergraduate students, when you talk about Talent Strong, we're preparing those students to be prepared to be part of this program because we want our students to stay in East Texas. And how we're doing that, we're rearranging curriculum. So we have some opportunities to build in some certificates so they can graduate with the skills ready to be ICU ready, so they can get the experience and then apply for this program. We're in progress. We'll be back.
So I'm a comment, Madam Chair. First, I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'm very familiar with your area. And I get a chance to visit the opportunity of different programs around the state, and I don't know if I'm science, but academic. But my question is, the shortage that we have in nursing, and I know it's specifically applied to anesthesia, which is a great program that you're proposing, by the way. But the concern that I talked to deans in nursing is the concern about faculties for nursing. As we continue to look at programs for nursing, and then specifics anesthesia and visiting with the president of MD Anderson and the nursing group there, and all over the state, different needs that we have. How are we preparing, or do you have any recommendations on how we can prepare nurses to teach? We can have more programs and continue to have more programs and doctorate programs in nursing. But do you have, being in the profession and teaching, do you have any ideas on how we can get professors and teachers and nurses and back into the field.
We have more ideas than time and money.
Like anything else, all it takes is money, right?
We have lots of ideas, at every level. And Dr. Chilton, in fact, had a very unique, program that was just funded by a grant from the coordinating board that just completed, that we're using embedded, clinical specialists in the hospitals to serve as faculty. It's a win-win for everybody. For the CRNA program, and by the way, Dr. Reiner is a CRNA. She's our assistant professor for advanced, or assistant dean for advanced practice. And she's received 6 inquiries so far from definitely prepared nurses and anesthetists in our area who are very anxious to be part of this program. So people are very, very excited about it.
Thank you.
I guess I have a question real fast. Hearing some personal laundry on behalf of friends and also leading that into a question. So I had 2 friends, one's from Paris, one's from Longview, out by you guys. 98th percentile MCAT scores, 3.9 in North GPAs. Really wanted to go home to the new medical school this past year in the application process, and they were both denied and got into Baylor and UT Southwestern, which obviously are great medical schools. And they were very passionate about going back to East Texas. And obviously there's bell curves on why they could not have been accepted. But you look at them on the face value and knowing them personally, you're like, you have advocated, you want to go back to East Texas. There's a new medical school with this philosophy and this mission. Anyway, why weren't they accepted? So what, from this new program and the health programs in general, when you say you want to address the needs of the health issues in East Texas, I'm from relatively Northeast Texas. What is there a percentage you're aiming to accept from that region? Like how A&M UT do so many have to come from Texas. Is there a percentage from East Texas, or is it more of a holistic evaluation and taking everything?
But are you asking Gage about medical school or their nursing?
Just about all the health programs in general, if there's this need for East Texas healthcare improvement, is there a percentage you're targeting with every program, or is it a program by program basis, or?
It's definitely a program by program basis, and I can't speak for Dr. Willis and how they did theirs. I do know that because they completely funded the first year's medical school, they had an overwhelming number of applications, ridiculous number.
That's exactly right. They were fortunate for the entering class to do that. NYU did the same thing, and they obviously who's not going to apply to a full tuition, right?
That's full tuition for all 4 years, for all years, paramedical school paid for it.
It's a situation, just having a little bit of admissions in those competitive schools, is that you can probably fill the class with those numbers you mentioned, but there's a lot that goes into admissions holistic approach.
Sure, I guess I would. Absolutely, there is. I was just wondering if there was a set percentage that you were trying to target that was, from what would be considered East Texas, or if it was just a,
No, we are not limiting it to people who are dedicated to stay in East Texas, but we'll certainly look at those candidates more carefully.
Gotcha.
Dr. Either, do you want to say anything more about that?
Yeah, a lot of it goes back to what Welcome said earlier about the residencies too, like in medical schools, people do their training in a certain area, there's a good percentage, 72, 75% stay in that area. So you would think, like you're thinking, that you've got great talented students from your area, you want to recruit and hopefully get there, but it's a complex issue.
sure.
We do want to keep the nurses.
Yes.
Do you have a sense of just approximate how many of your students are from the region versus coming from the parts of
It depends on which program we're talking about, because certainly our graduate programs, we have a wider net because their programs are online. But undergraduates, I don't know the exact numbers, so I don't want you to quote me on this one, okay? But we have the large percentage come from the East Texas area. We do have quite a few students come from the Dallas and Houston area as well, but they tend to go back to Houston and then Dallas. They tend to go.
Any additional comments, questions? Okay, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas at Tyler for a Doctor of Nursing, a DNP practice in nurse anesthesia? May I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion, and I have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations so much. Thank you. Thank you. Next is agenda item 10.3 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio for a Doctor of Nursing practice, DNP, in nurse anesthesia. Elizabeth Mayer will present this item and be available to answer questions. We have representatives here as well. Dr. Jacqueline Roque, Vice President for Academic Faculty and Student Affairs, Dr. Sonia Cardin, Dean of Student Nursing, and Dr. Allison Peterson, Assistant Professor and Clinical Director for the CRNA program. Are also students.
The University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Nursing Practice degree, or DNP, in nurse anesthesia that would begin in the fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered face-to-face to students in San Antonio. The institution is seeking accreditation for the program from the Council on Accreditation of Nurse Anesthesia Educational Programs. And in accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, UT Health Science Center San Antonio will hire an assistant director and 2 additional CRNA faculty prior to the fall of 24 start date. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair, and all of the board members. We are very grateful for your consideration of our proposal for a DNP in nurse anesthesia. At UT Health San Antonio, we have 6 schools. We have our Law School of Medicine, School of Nursing, School of Dentistry, School of Health Professions, Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences, and last year, as part of the statistics that Ms. Mayer provided, our new School of Public Health who approved an MPH in public health that we hope will launch with students in August of 2024. We're really proud of this particular initiative. We have multiple tracks of the doctorate of nursing practice, and Dean Harden will be happy to tell you more. I think what makes this particular program of interest to you is the incredible partnership we have with our Department of Anesthesiology in the Long School of Medicine. They've been incredible partners, both financially as well as academically, and I think that that is a hallmark of how our team San Antonio state and nation. Thank you, Dean Harden.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Dean Harden, and this will be the 4th program that I will be involved with. So I'm very excited about having walked into a situation, been here for a year now, where a lot of work had already been accomplished by my colleagues. And I think this track will be one of the tracks for our current DNP program. We already have the core courses established, but this will be specifically focused on the nurse anesthetist. We have wonderful partnerships, as was stated. I think I'm like you, I want everyone to stay here in Texas. I'm a little selfish. I want to make sure there's someone there to take care of myself and family. But I do think that we have already seen tremendous interest just from individuals wanting to come into the program within their account. And I don't think we'll have any difficulty either in getting those slots. I'm very excited to be here. And my esteemed colleague, Dr. Allison Peterson, is directing our program. Thank you for having us today. I'm excited for this program in San Antonio. I've worked as a CRNA in San Antonio for over the last 23 years. And I've worked in the Department of Anesthesia with Long School of Medicine as a CRNA. And they've been very helpful in helping me get this program going. Nurses in the ICU have always been coming to me, why is there not a program in San Antonio? I don't want to go to Houston. I don't want to go to Dallas, the Fort Worth area. I want to stay home or have a support system to get through this program because it's very rigorous. It takes a lot of time and a lot of commitment. And so to be able to offer it in San Antonio with your family here, it's a great thing for nurses in that area. you.
Comment if I may, Madam Chair.
Sure.
So obviously with two back-to-back programs, there's a definite need, right? But Dean, I was going to ask you, you've been there for years. I'm familiar, being from the Valley, familiar with the Health Science Center for many years. Friends and doctors ago, and just, Francis Farmer, Chancellor of the UT system, and of course, saw him a couple weeks ago at the conference in New York City, and knowing all that's going on there, the great work that y'all do at the UT San Antonio Health Science Center. My question is, you've been there a year. What is your background, and where were you before?
Yeah, so I guess my background is I'm from the western part of North Carolina in the Appalachian Mountains is where my people are from. And I was last at the University of Louisville in Kentucky. And I had been there for 4 years and was not expecting this position to open up. I have family here in Texas, and lo and behold, got a job, got the offer, and was very thrilled about it. I'm first generation high school graduate. My parents did not graduate high school. So you hear a lot about first generation college graduate, but I have to say I'm a first generation high school graduate, and of course first generation college. I feel like I have a lot in common with the people of San Antonio. We get a large percentage of our students that are first generation, and that's a little bit about me.
The reason I asked is earlier, I asked about getting talent and getting professors in nursing to teach, and especially administration level. What kind of brought you to Texas? I'm curious because that's one of the big challenges we have in faculty, bringing quality faculty in the health professions. All professors, deans, potential deans, but thank you for sharing that. Because I kept trying to get an idea, what are some of the challenges and what brings people to Texas, the talent to Texas. So thank you for sharing that.
Additional comments or questions? All right, do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas Health Science Center at San Antonio for a doctor of nursing practice in nurse anesthesia? May I have a motion? So moved. A motion by Ms. Gilma,
Second.
and I have a couple of seconds. We'll go with Janet. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations. Thank you so much. Next is agenda item 10N4 is consideration and possible action to approve the request from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center for a doctor of philosophy in public health. The mayor will present this item and be available to answer questions. Dr. Joseph Su, Assistant Dean for Academic Affairs, and Dr. Saad Omar, Dean, also here to ask questions. Welcome.
The University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center is seeking approval to offer a Doctor of Philosophy degree program in public health. This would begin in fall of 2024. The proposed program would be offered in person to students in Dallas. In March 2022, the Peter O'Donnell Jr. Foundation gifted UT Southwestern $100 million to both endow and provide current use funds for the O'Donnell School of Public Health. As I mentioned yesterday, in accordance with the institution's proposed hiring schedule, the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center will hire 6 core faculty members in the first year of the program. And also, as I mentioned yesterday, the institution is planning to cover the costs for all students. So that concludes my remarks. And I'm sure we'll have.
There are substantial public health challenges highlighted by unfortunately reduction in life expectancy nationally, and that includes Texas as well. So public health is the art of the possible, ranging from eradication of smallpox to reduction in childhood maternal mortality. Even in our lifetimes, our public health successes that have been highlighted by the CDC and others. In Texas, we need more public health programs, particularly research-heavy doctoral programs, and we made the case in our application for that. And I'll provide a few updates as well in terms of since our application was submitted, what has happened. But before that, why UT Southwestern? We are fortunate to have a legacy of science-based research and evidence generation, and UT Southwestern decided to extend that to public health. We're fortunate to have 6 Nobel Prize winners, 20 as of 2 weeks ago, National Academy of Medicine members. We actually represent this state very well. Last year, all 3 inductees to the National Academy of Medicine were from UT Southwestern, and one of them being from the new School of Public Health. And so our focus was to extend this excellence to public health impact. And so to create novel and responsive doctoral programs. And so our 2 tracks that we have proposed that you have seen are, one is health data science, and the other one is health economics and policy. Both of them, we believe, are responsive to what public health and biomedical research needs at this point. Data-heavy, science-heavy scholarship that is what we call consequentialist, meaning the value of our academic programs should be and hopefully will be judged by the impact we have on either clinical practice or public health recommendations. A few updates and early impact. We enrolled and matriculated our first class of MPH students. That will give you an idea of what kind of applicants we are looking for our graduate program. We started with 51 students. We were actually aiming a little bit lower, but we got really good response. Our median GPA of our starting class of master's students is 3.75. And we draw the biggest undergrad school is UT Austin. But other institutions are well represented, including Rice, SMU, UTD, A&M, and institutions outside Texas as well, mostly Texans coming back, including Cornell, Johns Hopkins, USC, and Wellesley. So we are very happy with our starting initial batch of graduate students, and we hope, and we have indications that that kind of attraction of a research-focused degree will attract other talent to our PhD programs as well. In order to support these graduate programs, we just a few highlights. Currently, for this financial year, we have $14 million funding, research grant funding, and this is for just budgeted for this financial year. If you add cumulatively all funded grants, that adds up to approximately actually more than $27 million. And we've just started, and we have a lot of these submissions pending. As of last month, actually as of this month, we have 48 full-time faculty, and we are doing well in terms of our future recruitments as well. As it was mentioned, we received, which is the largest founding gift for a School of Public Health and the largest ever gift to a public school of public health. And we are very responsible and hopefully strategic about where we utilize these resources. Of course, we are utilizing it for faculty recruitment as well, but intentionally using it to recruit the best and brightest to our graduate programs. Our stipends are competitive, very competitive, and the intention is to say to increase the pool of talent from various regions of Texas and perhaps beyond as well, a small proportion, but that enriches the cohort, overall cohort experience as well, to recruit a broader pool of talent by providing support to them so that they can focus on their studies. So that's a little bit of an update, especially since we submitted the application.
Thank you. Would you like to make comments?
Okay. thank you for this opportunity to present here all the board member. And so yeah, just kind of quick update. And so since we proposed this program, and we already got a lot of interest, inquiry about our program. And so I mean, initially when we were asked by the THCB, the voting board, to invite some potential students to be interviewed. And then as an associate dean, I was like scratching my head. We don't have any student yet, so who can be interviewed, right? So we were so fortunate. We have 9 students who had already have a master degree from local area, from UT Arlington, UTD, and some other, and they volunteered to come in to be interviewed. And so we got a very positive response. I was surprised because we were not allowed to coach them. And so all the students, they got highly about why they want to come to UT Southwest and how they value the rigor on research at UT Southwest. And ever since that, we got additional contact and they express their interest to come to this program. So there's obviously a strong interest to our program and definitely to UT Southwest because what Dean just mentioned about all the has a reputation, and the fact he himself is a academy medicine member, and he mentioned he was so humble about he did not mention it himself. No, he's a member of academy medicine, so that really makes some difference. Yeah, thank you.
I have a comment from our team. Public health is so much needed. So I studied health science in the Northeast, and there's this private school, and what I'm talking about, but the public health arena is important. You talk about the cohort for your NPH, 51 students. How many students apply for the position when you through that NPH? Approximately.
Yeah, we had 388 students start the application, 189 completed the application.
How many?
189.
189. Do you guys interview students?
No, we did not interview. For the master degree student, we did not interview. But for the PhD student, we
For
will.
the PhD students, you will.
Yeah.
They have to have a master's before they do the PhD? Not required.
Ideally, yes.
Ideally, but not required.
It's not required, but ideally, I think for it would be really prepare them for the PhD if they already have an MPH. Have a master degree would be great.
And then my other question is, you noted 2 different areas of health population. Are you looking to maybe expand those areas within the public health arena?
Yes, that's the hope. That we started to we wanted to have modest goals in our first cohort, but we have heard already. In fact, even amongst the workforce of UT Southwestern, in the area from our health department, and some of the best tutors, frankly, come from are folks who have a little bit of work experience after their masters, and they come in and do their PhD. And so we have heard from sort of colleagues at Parkland that there is a need there for a lot of folks. Parkland Health System, THR, which is Texas Health Resources, and other partners as well. So yes, so we have heard about not just these programs from them, but to expand the offerings. So if we expand, the early areas that we are considering include clinical research. We are not, we're not officially planning for it before we get the authorization here, one step at a time. But very quickly, the second step is likely to come fairly quickly. The other demand is clinical informatics. The third demand is health behavior and health promotion. And there is some demand in applied epidemiology. So folks who do that in health departments, health systems, etc. So these are 3-4 areas where we have already heard from folks. Obviously, not all of them will be added as concentrations, but that is our current long list.
So that's good. So a lot of the top programs, public health, know a lot about this area for international students. Are there a lot of international students in your MPH program, and are you looking at that in your PhD program?
So you're right. So the top programs often
I'm
have.
talking about, Bloomberg.
Yeah. So I'm an alum.
Hopkins,
Yeah.
you're an alum from Bloomberg.
I'm an alum.
And School of Public Health at Harvard. And two, I wanted to describe that at Southwestern because you've got a great medical center and great health sciences. So I mean, you're an alum of one of those schools, which is great because I think for programs like these in Texas, we need to grow these programs. And so thank you for bringing this forward to get the PhD and the research aspects of public health, which sometimes doesn't get all the notoriety with some of the academic medical centers, not only in our state, but nationally. And this is an opportunity for Southwestern because you're right, you've got the top number of Nobel laureates. So I sit on the UT System Chapters Executive Committee, like, all people at Southwestern, and y'all guys are doing a great job. So thank you for bringing this proposal.
Any additional comments?
Actually, I got a question. You mentioned about you have 6 Nobel Prize on staff
Yes.
and a few, academy in medicine on staff, right? Is that right? Is it correct?
Yeah, we have 20 National Academy of Medicine members that are, UT Southwestern affiliated.
Fantastic. A lot of schools need to learn from you guys how to recruit this amazing faculty, by the way.
Dr. Wong, I've sat in some of the lectures of some of those people. Amazing.
Amazing,
You
yeah.
have them in
So
Texas.
we need to continue doing, all the schools need to continue to do the recruitment in terms of hiring those people to Texas. That's one of the push. But on the other hand, also, you mentioned a little bit about the research program. Is it focus? What was the research focus mainly in? I know clinical science a little bit, maybe policy side, and or actual disease research. What's the focus on particular degree?
So there are a few early areas of research in this within the School of Public Health. Obviously, UT Southwestern has a broad research portfolio. One of our early strengths is health data science, which is mathematical and statistical science combined with data science, core data science. So some of our faculty were doing AI applied to medicine and public health before people started playing with the ChatGPT. So that we already have an early strength of that. Another area of strength is cancer. Both looking at treatment options and evaluating those, but specifically screening and some of the community-based programs that go out there. And so that's another strength. We have a new strength. We have recruited a cluster on what's called implementation science, which means that the basic science discovery is how do they go out and be implemented. So we've recruited a couple of faculty from Duke and then recruited a really exciting early stage faculty with Texas connections who's currently at Harvard at Tia Chan coming down. And so then vaccines and public health is an emerging strength. And so these are a few emerging existing strengths, and then we hope to expand on these.
So you only admit medical school students or other they can apply too, right?
That's what I was asking.
They can apply too.
I was going to ask you on your philosophy and thought, Dean, about dual degree programs, which are very popular, MD, MPH. MPH is really the dual degree programs, but that's separate than this PhD program, which is great. But there's a lot of interest in dual degrees now in medicine, engineering, medicine and business, medicine and public health. What is your thought about that?
That's a really good point. We already have within our MPH, there are two types of Masters in Public Health students. One is MPH standalone. The other one is MD MPH. And so we already have those. So a majority is 17 of our students are MD MPH. The rest are standalone MPH. And based on early recruitment for medical students, it's likely to expand, or if not, at minimum, stay the same. We have a lot of interest from our MD PhD students. We have federally funded slots as well as Perot Foundation funded programs in MD PhD, and there is interest in some of those students doing their PhD in public health. And that is a clear unmet need that I've heard from leadership of the graduate school that runs the MD PhD program, that some of them would like to
do their MD PhD, the PhD part in public. So absolutely. And there's also interest from fellows and early stage faculty. So clinical fellows who have to do in some of the fellowships have a research year. There's interest, and we thought we'd move on something like this a little bit later, but we have been nudged by the demand to consider that seriously, that pathway seriously from some of the smartest clinical fellows who do research sometimes as part of their fellowship to consider that. Hopkins has a really good program that.
Yes, I'm familiar with that too. So I think one of the things according to what we're looking at when you talk about minority PhD candidates and not only in healthcare but in general. And I think this is an area in our part of the state that providing these opportunities help grow those numbers as part of our Talent Strong Texas and the numbers we want to do as far as recruiting and having opportunities for students. So that's really important.
So far, we have received a really good pool of applicants, which is very diverse. So currently, we have in our master's program a really healthy representation of underrepresented minorities in graduate school. So URG, which is slightly different than URM, but similar groups, and we have a pretty healthy representation there. So we are very happy with that. Forward. Hopefully, that will be translated to a PhD.
Thank you. Very glad to hear that. It's wonderful to have students want to be going to PhD program. Thank you for.
Anybody else? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve the request from the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center for a philosophy in public health? May I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Now, we are at the end of the agenda, but we're gonna circle back around to agenda item 10J, which was the discussion on the Burrell College osteopathic medicine certificate of authority in Texas. I have a revised motion. Well, first of all, is there any additional discussion?
I'm hesitant to add restraints on the third round of a certificate of authority program. I'm curious about this program going forward. So when they complete authorization or accreditation, then what does that look like? I think you're not going back to us for continuing authority to operate.
Yes, back one more time.
No, I know, but what happens after when they no longer need that, when they've completed the accreditation process?
So my understanding is that I'm gonna actually let our.
So Ms. Hawk, this is a good question. So under the statute, once you complete your certificate of authority authorizations, or you become an exempt institution, or an institution that is not a professional degree program, normally they can apply and receive a certificate of authorization, which would give them that kind of formal continuing authority from the board to operate. Back in 2 sessions ago, so 2021, I believe, the legislature actually adopted a new provision in 61.303C-1, which limits the board's authority. It actually prevents the board from granting a certificate of authorization to a professional degree program. So at that point, the entity would have to basically operate just in compliance with NC-SARA limitations. So that's the compact. And so that has certain limitations around how many placements they could have per site. So for a non-professional degree organization, they could come on to a certificate of authorization, but now the board cannot grant a certificate of authorization to a professional degree program based on that recent legislation. And then the board also does have the authority to have, for good cause, I think it was mentioned earlier today, you can go beyond the 8 years of the 4 certificates of authority, but you would have to make a good cause finding to allow that.
So in this particular case, after their 8 years, what does that look? They'll just operate under the agreement?
So under the existing statutes, yes, they would have to either apply for another certificate of authority under good cause, or they would have to just move on to compliance with, and participation through the NC Terra agreement.
Any additional questions or comments? All right, hearing none, I will read the motion as amended. Do I have a motion to approve item, Nicole, I can't read your. Sanjay. Okay.
NJ, yes, sorry. Ms. Longman. I was writing in a bit of haste, my apologies.
Do I have a motion to approve item 10J, request from Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine for its third certificate of authority to subject to grant degrees in Texas and conditioned upon continual efforts of the Burrell.
I'm sorry, Ms. Longman.
MOU.
My handwriting. We can just loop back on this, given my trouble with the script. So earlier today, Mr. Wilson asked about the limitations on the certificate of authority. We already have, the board has in effect an MOU with Burrell with multiple conditions that was signed in 2019. So those conditions continue as a part of the certificate of authority. So I just made the clarifying, it's already a condition of their continued authorization or authority to operate. But it should say just the board would move to approve their third certificate of authority, subject to the continued effect and conditioned upon the continued implementation of that coordinating board MOU with Burrell. And that's dated December 2019. So if you have a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rhodes. Apologies for the messiness of the writings.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Cole. That concludes the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success part of the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Agenda item 11 is matters related to the agency operation committee chaired by Ms. Schwartz. Emma.
Good afternoon. During the Agency Operations Committee meeting yesterday, the committee approved the minutes from the July 2023 Agency Operations Committee meeting. The committee also received a report on grants and contracts, a review of the fiscal year 2023 financial report, a discussion of an audit report on the distribution of the National Research University Fund, an update on internal audit reports and activities, an update on state and federal compliance monitoring reports and activities, and an update on the agency cybersecurity framework. Agenda item 11B, report on grants and contracts, was approved on consent. And that concludes the Agency Operations Committee report.
Now, we will return to agenda item 7H. For this agenda item, the board will meet in closed session. Pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.074, the board will meet in closed session to discuss the performance evaluation of higher education, general counsel, and internal audit. No other business of the board will be discussed before we could reconvene in open session. The time now is 12:51 p.m. Board members, please follow the Texas Higher Education Board staff who will lead us to room 2.006, the executive session. Board members on Zoom, please remain on the call while staff assign you to the executive session breakout room. Please be patient as it will take a moment for us to see the public message, or for you to see the public message asking you to join the virtual breakout. You will automatically be moved into the executive session as soon as you click on the join breakout room. Okay, the executive session has concluded. No action was taken during executive session. The time is now 2:14 p.m. The board is now reconvened in open session. Members, do I have a motion to delegate to the chairman authority to finalize the evaluation consistent with the board's discussion?
So
Motion by Ms. Williams, do I have a second? Second by Mr. Anwar. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition, say no. Hearing none, the motion passes. This concludes our meeting, and the time is now 2:15 p.m. And so do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move that down.
Do I have a second?
second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Long, second by Ms. Thomas. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Any opposition? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you all for a great meeting. Have a good day.
Enthusiastic and